Councilmember Gama,
Here.
Councilmember Hernandez,
Here.
Councilmember Martinez,
Present.
Mayor Pro Tem McQueen LaShawn,
Here.
and Mayor Perez.
Here. The inspiration tonight will be given by Councilmember Gama.
Thank you, Mayor Perez. For me, the best part of being on city council is when I get to present inspiration. I always look for a person in our community who is inspiring, and for today's inspiration, I did not have to look very far, which, by the way, has been my experience over the last 5 years. My morning ritual for the last 20 years is to get Anna Cappuccino coffee on the way to work. For the last year and a half, many times it was Charlie Neos who would serve me coffee at 5 a.m. At the beginning of the current semester at Oxnard Union High School District, Charlie serves me no more. He has moved on. We'll get back to that in a moment, but before I do, I want to share with you some of the things that I admire about Charlie. He was, added emphasis, a resident of the city of Port Hueneme up until recently. He has an amazing drive for his education. He participated in independent study in the Oxnard Union High School District. He played football at Rio Mesa, as did I. Once a Spartan, always a Spartan. There's the ex-Rio Mesa principal right there. He always provided excellent customer service at Anna Cappuccino. His 4-letter last name contains 2 vowels and 2 consonants like mine. Why is Charlie my inspiration? Charlie is my inspiration because he is in Arizona attending college right now on a scholarship, and he hasn't even graduated from high school yet. How's that possible, you might ask? It's possible because he has an education drive like no one else, and he propelled himself through independent study and earned enough credits to graduate early. Because he has earned enough credits to satisfy graduation, and he is a good football player, he's been provided a scholarship to play football in Arizona. So rather than attend the last semester of his high school career, he's in Arizona preparing to play football and furthering his education. I'm pretty sure not too many elementary school kids are watching this meeting right now, but I want our community to know about Charlie and his accomplishments. His accomplishments are very inspiring, especially for younger kids who may be struggling with their education at this time. If you know of any kids struggling, tell them about Charlie. Tell them to work hard and focus on today, just like Charlie did. Now Charlie lives in a dorm and is separated from his large family. I talked to him the other day and I was telling him that we're all here waiting for his return in 4 years. And I know that he may get homesick, but I hope it helps him to know that we're thinking about him and that he's an inspiration to all the young kids in our community. The next 4 years will fly by, and when he returns, not too much will have changed, except perhaps the color of my hair. Charlie was going to try and call in. I don't know if he made it.
I don't think he's made it on.
Oh, no. Anyways, he is a great inspiration for the youth of our community, and I'm really proud of Rio Mesa High School, middle college principal Mark Contreras, and the district for giving him the opportunity to excel at his own pace. And his own pace was very fast. So that's my inspiration. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Gama. We will now hear public comments. Public comments not pertaining to items on the agenda. Comments are limited to 3 minutes. This process will be the same for comments pertaining to each agenda item. Madam Clerk, does anyone have any public comments tonight?
We have 3 in-person public comments, first with Tom Fiala, followed by Becky Bruning.
Good evening, City Council. I'm Tom Fiala, and I'm representing the VFW. And I just wanted to let everyone know, I've already let the police department know, fire department know, this weekend we're having a memorial for one of our members who passed away earlier last year. And she was she was a 39-year veteran of the Air Force. And we are doing a memorial, which includes a bugler and a 21-gun volley. So we're going to shoot guns. We're not going to do them. We actually have the county, the Ventura County Color Guard coming by, and they're going to do the 21-gun salute for her. But I know how everyone is in the city of Port Hueneme. When you hear gunshots, everybody loses their mind. So it's just us, It'll be between 1:30 and 2:30 on Saturday. I've already let the police know and the fire department know. So just, if you hear gunshots, not any problem. It's just us fooling around at the VFW. So I just wanted to let you all know.
Thank you.
Fooling around.
Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, staff. I'm here representing the Real Guppy Outdoors tonight. If you've been following us on Facebook, you know we have a fishing tournament coming up at the end of March. It's a $10 monthly donation on our website to enter into the competition. We are also in May having a fundraiser dinner. And this Sunday is our Family Fish Day out at the piers. So anyone interested, show up. We furnish everything. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joan Tharp.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff, and public. My name is Joan Tharp, and I'm a resident of Port Hueneme for over 30 years. Tonight, I urge the city to develop a concrete plan to address sea level rise. While the 2045 general plan includes climate action and specifically mentions sea level rise, it is a blueprint with no specific solutions. Quoting from table cap-2, adaptive capacity by climate impact, sea level rise, the city has a beach replenishment program and a variety of policies around flood control. These efforts do not focus on the locations most at risk of sea level rise, and there are no policies surrounding possible relocation if necessary. I recently completed California Against the Sea by Rosanna Shaw, an essential read for all leaders responsible for coastal municipalities. Shaw outlines the impacts of rising ocean levels on coastal cities and provides valuable resources and solutions. In one chapter, she quotes Christina Hill, who teaches sea level rise adaptation at UC Berkeley. Climate change really means water is going to come from 4 directions. It's going to come from the extreme rain from above. It's going to come in from the sides, from rivers or channels. It's going to come from the ocean in the way of salt water coming in, and it's going to come up from below. Sea level rise is a lot more complicated than just waves breaking over seawalls and beaches disappearing. Imagine the groundwater beneath your feet. As the ocean moves inland, it pushes up the trapped water until it breaks up on the surface. We've way underestimated the flooding problem, Hill says, noting that many communities will be hit with rising groundwater long before any waves crash onto the shore. Port Hueneme has been challenged from 3 of the 4 directions this year, and in 2013, the State Coastal Conservancy dispersed $2 million of emergency shoreline stabilization when erosion threatened Surfside Drive and other infrastructures after an interruption in sand replenishment. I fear the city has a false sense of security in relying on the biannual sand replenishment to protect infrastructure from sea level rise. Addressing the challenges posed by rising groundwater, flooding channels, and torrential rains requires careful planning. Similarly, combating the threat of beach erosion is essential. Hueneme's ample beach space post-replenishment presents a unique opportunity to establish a dune ecosystem for erosion protection. While sand replenishment remains viable, the city should capitalize on this opportunity to construct a sand dune system, recognizing that its viability may not always be assured. I urge the city to prioritize planning for future emergencies stemming from climate change and sea level rise. Thank you for your consideration.
Thank you.
That concludes general public comments.
And no written comments?
No.
Thank you. We will now move on to the agenda approval for City Council. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Thank you. Madam Clerk, please take a vote.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Do any members of council have any conflicts of interest to disclose for any item on the agenda? Not seeing any, we will move on to presentations. We have 4 tonight. The first one will be to introduce and welcome a new employee or new employees, Human Resources Risk Management Manager Frank Lee and Police Officer Richard Gutierrez.
Thank you, Mayor. And I'm going to start with introducing one, and then I'm going to ask the chief to introduce our new police officer. But to start, I want to introduce our new Human Resources and Risk Manager, Frank Lee. I previewed at the last council meeting. I talked a little bit about him starting because that was his first day, but we wanted to bring him out and introduce him to everybody and let people know about our new Human Resources Risk Manager position, our new person. So Frank, I'm going to ask him to come up as I give a little bit of background. Frank most recently served as the division manager in the Human Resources Department for the city of Palo Alto, and he brings experience from several public agencies such as the Department of Homeland Security, the California Department of Public Health, and he also served in the U.S. Army. So we're happy to have Frank come in, and this is a critical position that we had a vacancy in for several months, and so we're really excited to have Frank, and we wanted to introduce him and give him an opportunity to say a few words.
Thank you very much. Good evening, Mayor Pro Tem, council members. It's my honor to serve as the HR Risk Manager for the City of Port Hueneme. Prior to joining the city, my 20 years of HR experience spans from the U.S. Army, corporate recruiting, personnel audits with the California Department of Public Health, investigation analysis with the Department of Homeland Security, and more recently, I served as an analyst, business partner, manager, division manager in the City of Palo Alto Human Resources Department for a little over 10 years. Under the leadership of City Manager Vega, Deputy City Manager Pretz, I will focus on the city's greatest assets, which is the employees. I've had a chance to visit a few city locations and met the great people of this organization, and I look forward to meeting all the employees that help move the city forward. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Welcome.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Frank. And next, I want to introduce Chief Federico to introduce our newest police officer.
Thank you, everyone. Tonight I'm here to introduce to you our newest hired officer, Richard Gutierrez. Richard was born in Santa Barbara and was raised in Ventura. He served after high school, he served 4 years in the U.S. Army. Did you guys swap Army stories when you were in orientation together? 4 years in the U.S. Army in infantry, deployed to Afghanistan, and left as a specialist. After his time in the Army, he attended the Golden West Police Academy in Huntington Beach, California. And upon completing that, he worked for a short time at the Oxnard Police Department. In a time where it's competitive to get good people, compassionate officers, I'm glad we were able to get him over here to Port Hueneme PD. He's been very humble and happy to be here, and he's very reserved, which is why he has such a short bio compared to some of the others, but he has become so well-liked already in his first few weeks. So we appreciate having him here. Richard, would you like to say a few things?
Just want to say good evening, everyone. First off, I want to thank the City of Port Hueneme and the City of, or the Police Department for giving me the opportunity to serve the community. Seems like they're a very close-knit department, along with the community seems to be very friendly. I look forward to my future with the department and the city. I'd like to also thank my parents, Juan and Lori Gutierrez, for their support throughout this whole process. I think that's about it for me.
Welcome.
Welcome. Thank you.
We will now do his swearing in with Georgiana, and then there'll be a badge pinning right after that.
I, Richard Gutierrez, do solemnly swear that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of the State of California against all enemies, foreign and domestic, that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the Constitution of the United States and to the Constitution of the State of California, that I take this obligation freely without any mental reservation or purpose of evasion, and I will well and faithfully discharge the duties upon which I'm about to enter. All right, thank you. Gonna be my father.
Would any council like to make any comments? I know we didn't get a chance to say anything to Mr. Lee or to Officer Gutierrez.
Just like to welcome both of you to our fine city. Look forward to seeing you out and about and doing great things.
Yes, welcome, everyone, both Mr. Lee and Officer Gutierrez. Okay, the next presentation will be an update from the Port of Hueneme, Oxnard Harbor District representative, or a Port Hueneme Oxnard Harbor District representative regarding the shoreside power system.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Mayor Perez and Mayor Pro Tem and council members and staff, and as well as the public and neighbors of ours. Really wanted to provide a moment to give you information on what's been happening since the storm that so badly affected all of us back at the end of December, and give you an update on what we've been doing. We have been unbelievably busy in kind of response to this, but wanted to give you all update, answer questions, etc. So I presume, can I click forward? Okay, great. All right, well, I'll just begin with a quick update, just running through information that's probably not new to any of you, but if we have members of the public watching at home, etc., love to share our story. We are, of course, the only deepwater commercial seaport between LA and San Francisco. We almost process about 16 billion annually in cargo. We're the #1 West Coast U.S. banana port, that making up the lion's share of the refrigerated cargo that we move through the port. #4 container port in California, a #6 West Coast container port, and a top 10 U.S. port for autos and produce. So we have had a tremendous amount of growth in the last 10 years. It's benefited the port, it's benefited the community, it's benefited Ventura County writ large. Almost 25,000 people in the community have a job because of the cargo that comes through the port, and it has been putting into the arm of the county more than $236 million in tax revenues. And as you can see in that line graph at the bottom there, it is the most robust element of the entire GDP for the county. So while a lot of the county has struggled post-pandemic and even during the pandemic with economic vitality, the port has been kind of the strength in that space. Just looking at where these jobs are, we like to point out these are direct jobs. So these are folks that are going to work every morning directly either inside the gate or just off port at some of the cargo processing facilities. And about 65% of them all work in both Oxnard and Port Hueneme. So we have a very strong element of local employment, putting food on the table, providing salaries that provide family supporting jobs. For us, community is really the calling card of what we try and do. And I know that mission statements and vision statements are a bit of a dime a dozen when it comes to large entities. But I've never worked in an organization, I've worked in many in my career, that holds as fast and as true and as ethically firm to its commitment to the community. We were founded with a vision from the community that traces its origins back into the 1860s of the Bard family and the opportunity for Ventura County, an area geographically so isolated from the rest of the state that really shipping was the only opportunity for both outward and inward growth of people, but also goods and commerce. We continue under that same onus today to really provide a location that not only provides work and sustenance to the people who work here, but has those benefits ripple through into the community. So things like food drives, things like the Community Benefit Fund, direct sponsorships of local activities. This is really the meat of where the heart of the port and our Board of Harbor Commissioners lie. And I know all of you are familiar with this, but I just wanted to touch on that. So as you can see here, our operating revenues have continued to be strong, have recently exceeded $20 million after 2021. We do have, of course, quite a bit of operating expense, operating heavy-duty machinery and docks and warehouses in a salty environment near the coast is a recipe for a lot of work to maintain those facilities, but it's not one that we shy away from and that we continue to hope for expanded growth, and done so with community and sustainability right behind both of those. So let's talk a little bit about specifically Shoreside Power. Shoreside Power, I'm the environmental manager. Shoot, I didn't even introduce myself. My name is Giles Pettifor. I am the environmental manager of the port. I've been there almost 7 years. This is really the meat and potatoes when it comes to our air quality program. That system that you see there, that is a 6,500 volt system that powers a container ship there at the dockside. That system was built to a cost of approximately $15 million back in 2015. Those are longshore workers there operating that machinery, connecting that vessel in, and that vessel will now run off of grid power. It will shut off the diesel auxiliary engines and run in a quiet, clean method. Now that system and the retrofit, you can see the cables coming down from the vessel, are highly specialized equipment. They're incredibly expensive to install in the first place. They are highly unique too. This is something that a lot of folks don't appreciate. Shore power systems globally are not the standard. There are very few locations globally where ships have the requirement or the ability to actually plug into shore power. California is the only state in the country, is the only location in the world where plug-in is required and is the operating standard for all the commercial seaports in the state, and has been since 2014. This is, again, another example of California being at the pointy end of the spear on sustainability issues. Well, December 21st, I'm sure we all lived through this together. This exceeded an order of magnitude of greater than a 1,000-year storm event. Now, we'll talk to that in a few minutes. But the reason that that is important is because it has the fingerprints of climate change written all over it. And as the previous speaker alluded to, climate change and sea level rise is going to be one of the biggest challenges of our lifetimes. It is a generational challenge that is going to affect every single coastal community in the state. And while many of us have done a lot, there is still tremendous work to be done, and the science continues to evolve in this space. And we're going to talk about that in relation to what happened on the 21st in particular. So Daniel Swain, many of you might know him. He's he's sort of a science celebrity, if you will. He has a large following through social media. He also really speaks truth to power when it comes to the nature of climate change for scientists trying to discern hard, complex data. Because when storm events like this happen, they produce a tremendous amount of data, and we're trying to glean through that quickly to understand what happened. That's going to relate to part of our response as well. So about 2:15 that morning, we saw unprecedented volumes of rain coming down region-wide. There was a convective cell. That means a highly, highly energy-dense pocket of cloud and water. Well, clouds are water. So basically water sat over the port and sat over Oxnard for about 2 hours. That cell was not really forecasted by the National Weather Service. It wasn't in their original forecast. But due to how intense, how much energy there was locked in this band of moisture, they issued a tornado warning that morning because of seeing activity on the eastern side of that cell. And it kicked off about 3 inches of rain in about 50 minutes. So just to give it some context, NOAA, the National Oceanic Atmospheric Administration that operates the National Weather Service, states that a 1,000-year storm event in the city of Port Hueneme, prior to this, would have been about 1.75 inches in 1 hour. We had almost 3 inches of rain in about 55 minutes. So that gives you an understanding, a context for how much water volume came down how quickly. And that is why we saw this unprecedented level of water moving around the community and causing catastrophic flooding from north of the base all the way down to the beach. So we immediately got folks working. We had a full crew on that night, and they were out working, 2 a.m. I was getting text messages. You can see in that, I thought I had a pointer. There's a drain in the corner there. You can see all of that. That is a Mafi, that flat thing in the middle there. There's almost 3 feet of standing water right there in that image. So thankfully, the city did help out. We had a Vector truck that was out there in a few hours. We began working on clearing drains, maintaining drains with the city, with our facility staff immediately, and worked all the way through the night, all the way through the day, all the way through the following night, but we're not able to really stem the flow of that level of unprecedented water volume. This is a still from one of our security cams. So this is looking east, that's Anacapa view and those homes behind us there. This is the Sunkist lot, or this is the southeastern corner, that's where the Banana Festival happens, in that parking lot right there. What you're seeing in that kind of angular, again, is our shore power infrastructure substation right there. That is almost 3 feet of water standing right there. Water and high voltage is not a good combination, and the system unfortunately shorted out at that time. Now that system was built in 2015 to the state of the science at that time, almost 10 years ago, in reflection of what was known about anticipated sea level rise, anticipated climate change. What we have seen through this event is that was not nearly enough. But at the time, that was the best of our knowledge, and that's a really important conclusion around climate change, is that our own understanding of it continues to evolve, and our need as stewards of public agencies have to adapt. And we have to be willing to take on acknowledging that perhaps we didn't get it right or that we need to do more in the future. So this still was when, after the rain had largely passed, I think that was about 3 a.m., you can see that port tractor in the back making a wake through the puddle there. Oh, it's actually a video. Okay, excellent. So there you go. You can see all of that water sparkling in the night, unfortunately. This is on the northern side. So that's the Clara Gate. So that's Clara Street and the corner with Naval Base Ventura County, and then sort of the northeastern corner of the port right there. Amazing volume of water not only came down west on Clara Street, but also sheet flowed across Naval Base Ventura County right onto the northern side of the port as well. Again, another short video from one of our security cameras. Another one showing water coming in from Clara Street. Again, this is accumulated debris. Some of that, you can see all of that bark. That's bark from adjacent areas, homes, neighbors of ours. This is the actual shoreside power system itself the following day. You can see arcing and spark and sort of burn marks on the infrastructure there, as well as water inside this system. Same thing here, another part of the system, additional scorching marks where you can see that. So unfortunately, when we got engineers out in the following day and the following weeks in SCE, they basically gave us their professional opinion that this system was beyond repair, unfortunately. Electrical systems have to be incredibly well engineered to be certifiable, and the reason they have to be certified is for safety. As we saw in that beginning video, those are our neighbors that are connecting 6,500 volts of power. That is no small task. So ensuring that this system is safe is critical to getting it certified and operating it safely. So this is, that's the vault. That's the thing that you saw the guys plugging the ship, or the connection into. That is that night. So that's inches of water pouring over the wharf itself into the vault. There was a ship plugged in at that time, and when the system shorted out, obviously that connection was lost. So lots of moisture inside the vaults. This is Clara Street. This is additional stuff. We feel that pain for the community of what happened that night being so unprecedented, and needing understanding, needing a postmortem on it to be able to respond better as we move forward. So we had our Board of Harbor Commissioners that the next day they issued an emergency proclamation that put us into basically response mode. Getting the right folks out to look at the system, begin our process of getting the finances worked out, as well as the actual structural, what do we do about this? How do we re-engineer and reconstruct this system that makes such a difference? Well, here is a tally. This is our initial estimate. So as you can see, that grand total is close to $40 million. That is the reality of building infrastructure in 2024. There is unprecedented competition for high voltage and medium voltage electrical components. Every single port in the state of California and many other heavy-duty facilities are in the middle of decarbonizing their operations, just like we are here. We are all in competition for the same transformers, the same switchgear, the same conduit. So those lead times are making the costs go up, and they're making times take a little bit longer, unfortunately. But this is all with an eye toward getting a system reconstructed. So this is a quick timeline. I have been in meetings almost every single day since this storm event, talking to elected officials, talking to responders, talking to other ports, talking to policy people about how we respond and how do we build a system that works as well, operates as quickly as possible. So you can see there, obviously, the finances of this with that $40 million price tag are critical for the success of being able to do this as quickly as possible. We've been talking to FEMA, we've been talking to the state. We are in the understanding that right now the dollar amount will not trigger FEMA reimbursement, but Cal OES seems very likely to be an option. We've been in constant communication with them. Austin Yang, who's from our port staff, our director of finance here, and he has been having a number of these conversations with not only the insurance folks, but also the state about how we pay for this, how we get this all moving. Obviously, conversations with state regulatory bodies like CARB have been essential, but we've also had conversations with State Assembly Member Bennett and State Senator Limon on this situation, as well as Federal Representative Brownlee as well. So we are going to need help. We're talking to everybody. We're sharing the story. We're explaining what we're doing about this. Well, we are estimating probably a year and a half to completion for a rebuild on a new system based on lead times on pieces of specialized, hand-built, high-voltage electrical infrastructure. In the meantime, we are looking at all of our options as far as emission control. We are fully aware of the difference that these systems have made in local air quality. As the environmental manager, this is my job. I have to enumerate this. I have to quantify this every year, and I appreciate that benefit and how that is now an expectation and really should be. What we have on the bottom of this slide here are a number of companies. So there is a fairly new technology that's been pioneered down in the San Pedro ports that is functionally a floating emissions capture barge. This is what it looks like. This is down in Long Beach, I believe. It is functionally a concrete injection arm that they would use for doing construction that's been modified to function like a giant Dr. Seussian shop vac and literally suck the emissions out of the stacks of the ships and then physically and chemically filter them on board that barge right there. We were in the works, have been in the works, to get one of these systems for more than 5 years. I've been having conversations with these companies going back more than 5 years, trying to get one of these systems dedicated and paid for Hueneme specifically. The challenge has been this is brand new technology. These have never worked on some of the categories of vessels that we have here. We are not afraid of a challenge. We always rise to them. So we are in direct communication with these companies as well as with the state, because the state will be critical in helping to fund this, about how quickly we could get one of those systems out here to have it operating on our refrigerated container vessels in the meantime as they don't have shore power. So that is our short-term desire, is around getting one of these systems up here. There are a few of these in construction right now, because January 1st, 2025, the auto carrier vessels, the RoRo ships that you've seen out there, those are going to be mandated by state law to have emissions control starting January 1st. So we've been planning on having one of these for the RoRo ships January 1st. We would like to get one or possibly more if they're available prior to that. This is why I'm on the phone all day, every day in these calls with people talking about how quickly we can get some of these things built. This is a photograph from, that was early January. There are a lot of elected officials in that. There's a lot of our trade brothers and sisters. There's a lot of community support and a lot of love in that photograph, showing the importance of the port. So what we want to say is that we are going to do this. We're going to do it right. We are going to answer questions around how it happened, but we're also going to, I'm trying to remember if I have the slide in here. Ah, yes, okay. So we have a lot related to sustainability. This is what I'm normally talking about, so this is my comfort zone in here. We've been doing a 3-year study on decarbonizing the Port of Hueneme. And what you can see in this graphic here is a timeline across the top. We have been looking at energy on port and trying to understand how we could decarbonize. And what we can see there is 2030 being a targeted date for full zero emission operations. Because of this storm event, we're not going to change that date. We're not going to shy away from that. We are going to be installing substantially more infrastructure in addition to shore power for cargo handling equipment, the cranes themselves. We're going to be building a second shore power system. I'm not sure if the community appreciated this, but the south terminal, the refrigerated container vessels, that's the one that broke, the reefer ships, the banana ships. The north terminal, auto carrier side, we've been planning to build a shore power system on that side for more than 5 years. It's like a 90% design state on that one. That one's fully funded. That one is a different voltage standard. So there's a little bit of in the weeds nuances there. But these are all in queue, and this is the commitment that we are making, that we are going to continue to that transition to zero emissions, and we want to deliver on that 2030 date. I think that's it for my slides. I'm happy to answer any questions if you all have any, but thank you for your time. I apologize for talking a little bit at length about this. This is near and dear to what we do, and is something that's really important to us. Lastly, we do have community air quality monitoring equipment, both at Haycox Elementary in South Winds and South Oxnard, and we have a monitor up on our Harbor Master building that's been having a few issues with power because of the storm events. We're going to be building a website. It's close to completion. We're doing language just to make sure all the English and Spanish translations work, to enable the community to see near real-time data from those monitors. I won't go into bore you with all the technical science around those right now, but those show a specific kind of air pollutant that is related to fossil fuel combustion. So happy to come back and explain all that to you at another time and even show you some examples of the data. The one at Haycox has been up there for more than 4 years now, so we have a very good understanding of functioning air quality along the Oxnard coastline.
Thank you. Does council have any questions or comments?
Thank you for all that information. I was really surprised to learn was it last year during the dredge process when we ran out of air pollution credits and we got involved. We actually had to stop the dredge, right? And it was said to me that the Port of Hueneme is the biggest emission producer in the county of Ventura. Is that accurate?
It depends on the constituent you're talking about. So the port for like a single source, like a location, a geographic location is that. The largest actual emitter of pollutants in the county is the 101 freeway. The number of truck trips, the number of pieces of machinery, et cetera. If you look at the state as a whole, this is a good analog to your question, Councilmember Gama. In the state of California writ large, 40% of statewide emissions, come from transportation. Only about 10% of that is from heavy duty. 30% of statewide emissions come from light duty vehicles. And that's a nuance that most of the public doesn't fully appreciate because we tend to think of planes and ships as big polluters. Ships contribute about 1% of state GHG, so that's greenhouse gas emission. Light duty vehicles, again, almost 30%. So in Ventura County, that same sort of reflection happens. You've got a huge freeway that has tens of thousands of light duty and heavy duty trips on it moving back and forward every day. If you look at our monitoring data from the Haycox system, when we see the worst air quality in the Oxnard region is when we have light winds from the north, typically during the winter at night, when you get a low sort of push from the north and it's pushing emissions from 101 down toward the monitor. Those are the worst particulate readings that we see other than wildfire. Wildfire is a whole nother conversation. Blows all the rest of that out of the water.
Yeah, I was really surprised the other day that a ship was coming in and the emissions were coming right down my street. And so sometimes the wind works against us.
Yeah, and those are really ephemeral. I mean, the important thing that we say when you look at why shore power is so beneficial is because when a ship comes in and leaves, you will get pollution from it, just like starting a cold engine. The engines in those ships are about the size of a condominium. They are massive, massive pieces of machinery. And the cylinders heads are, 8-10 feet across. They use a huge amount of energy. They produce a very large volume of emissions. Sometimes it's smoky when the engines are cold, starting and, leaving and arriving. But it's that interim time of sitting at the dock that's so critical.
And then one other question. So DEF,
Mhm.
the ships have to use DEF coming in, correct?
No, the ships are not running on diesel. They're running on a different sort of petroleum distillate that's made specifically for California. California has a fuel cleanliness requirement that exceeds the only recently adopted international global standard for marine oil, basically, by about a factor of almost 50. I think it's like 37 or something. So the California has what they call an emissions control area, and when you're within state waters, 3 miles, you have to switch over to the cleanest of the clean fuels. So when those ships are sitting there, they are burning literally the cleanest fuels you can buy for a ship, and they cost a very significant amount. But that's kind of neither here nor there. But it is important because those fuels have to get distilled just for ships that are coming within 3 miles of the shoreline and coming to the dock in California. Nowhere else in the world do ships operate at berth with as clean of a fuel. And again, that's another example of California, being at the pointy end of the spear on maritime stuff.
Thank you. There's a lot to this that I'm sure.
Oh, there's a lot. I mean, that's one of the conversation pieces that we're not trying to shirk any responsibility in this space, but we're trying to reflect the incredible complexity of it. I just remembered the last point I did want to make, though. We are starting March 1st. We're starting a climate action adaptation plan. That is a sea level rise exercise by and large, but it brings in clean air and it brings in adaptation. One of the elements in the conversations we've been having with both the state as well as a lot of academics, I was talking to a meteorologist from Scripps Institute of Oceanography just a few weeks ago about the storm event after the fact. And they were explaining how for a lot of jurisdictions, coastal jurisdictions particularly, Bay Area is a little bit further ahead of us on this. They're realizing that their precipitation risk, what the previous speaker spoke to, water coming from 4 sides, most of the jurisdictions in the state are using numbers, if they've done their sea level rise or flooding risk, they're using data that's now out of date. They don't yet have a model, they don't yet have a number to understand what this actual atmospheric river, climate change driven precipitation event is going to look like in the future. It's literally how new the science on this is. So we're going to be trying to do that locally, and we'd be happy to share that with your staff. And as you prepare or look at your LCP or some of these questions, this is the kind of stuff where we're going to be talking to the county, going to be talking to local cities on these conversations, because we're right again at that kind of bleeding edge of some of the science right now. So
Thank you.
I'll leave it at that. But thank you very much for your time, and happy to answer any other questions if anybody has one.
I just wanted to say thank you, Mr. Pettifor. I attended the climate workshop that you helped, that you spoke at.
Oh, yeah.
That was
Last week,
That
yes.
was last wonderful workshop. It was terrific. And I'm so proud of the port for the leadership that you're demonstrating in the area of climate change and taking mitigative measures. And look forward to hearing more from you.
Yeah, thank you.
If I could just quickly. Thank you for doing the presentation. There were a lot of sort of immediate urgent things we responded to with the storm and all those factors you talked about, but it's sort of surprised me over the last month that it seems like the attention from a lot of our community has shifted to the shoreside power system issue. And so it's been a bigger topic than I had anticipated kind of coming out of the storm.
Sure.
So for me, just because we're getting a lot of questions and we're going to try to respond to those and try to make sure we connect them, I wanted to make sure I just kind of have an understanding, and maybe the question that I anticipate some people would ask is, so from the presentation, is it fair to say the estimate to get the system back up was about 18 months?
Yeah, approximately. We're still working on those numbers because of the nature of, we're literally redesigning this as we're moving forward with conversations about how we pay for it.
Got it.
So,
and then the barge is one option that's being looked into, and I think one of the notes said potentially as early as 2025, but but not for certain yet?
We're hoping to have one sooner than that. We're,
Okay.
again, in that conversation because these systems are tens of millions of dollars to build and construct.
Okay.
There's only a limited number being built statewide. We're trying to advocate for getting one here. We do, of course, have to have conversations about how with that legally, contractually, all of the moving parts of that, and who pays for it. And then there's a lot to that. Operationally, how that works with tugs and vessels and all of that kind of fun. But we're hoping to have some good leads on that very soon and some clarity from CARB on that.
Okay.
But we're hoping, maybe as soon as like August, perhaps, if the planets align.
Okay.
But we're optimistic.
Great. And then just the last thing would be, I think some of the speakers, some of the people who've come to the city and asked questions about it, some of the people who've come to our past meetings to ask about it, they had asked essentially if there'd be a contact at the port that they could talk to and kind of get updates on it.
Mhm.
And I'm wondering if we can connect and try to get that information to give to those residents so that they can
Absolutely.
hear it directly from you.
Yeah, I've had a number of conversations with a few of them directly. I'm always happy to talk to anybody. We are redesigning our website, ironically, prior to this happening, and we're going to have a page on the new website. When that comes up, that'll be specifically a dashboard or a status update that'll get updated regularly on what's happening with this. So we do intend to, kind of have a landing page, if you will, for what's happening with this as things develop.
Great. Thank you.
Okay, thank you
Thank
so
you.
much. We're going to move on to the third presentation, which is an overview of the Regional Defense Partnership, or RDP, presented by RDP representatives.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, council members, and city manager and staff. I would like to introduce someone that's with me, Charlotte Craven. Many of you may know her. She was on the city council of Camarillo for many years, and she's my treasurer and has been our treasurer almost from the beginning. Yeah. And so thank you for allowing us to have this time to come talk to you. I'm going to start because I don't want to forget before I get into the presentation. This city has been the best, most longest city to sponsor, with the addition of, you've never missed a trip on our lobbying trips to Washington. In all 20-something years, I could count on Port Hueneme having the electeds there, and that means so much on these trips to have those people with us. When we go into all the deputy secretaries of defense and all of those offices, and often to the over to the West Wing area and talk to people, or Navy headquarters, and they see these elected people with us, and we have these issues, and they see a room full of electeds, and they say, "You mean all of you agree?" We never get something that everybody like that agrees upon, and it means so much to have these electeds there with us, supporting the Navy and supporting these issues. So thank you, Port Hueneme. Next slide, please.
Mr. Fisher, you have the.
Oh, I'm sorry, I
worries.
didn't get trained. Okay, what is RDP? Well, we're the base support group. Many people think, well, why do you have a base support group? Why can't the base just do their own thing? Well, you've got to remember that the military can't lobby for issues. They can have all kinds of issues, but they can't go lobby for them. They can't make things happen. And so we learned a big lesson. If you look at the history of RDP, there was no base support group here, and we had taken for granted that the base would always be here, and that there would always, that no one would shut down Point Mugu, no one would shut down the range, no one would shut down any of this. Well, we got a rude awakening. We got put on the Base Realignment and Closure Act back in the 90s, 95 and 96 period. And that woke us up. So at that point, we went to work on the BRAC, and I wasn't involved, obviously, at that time. I was still a civil servant. Just a little bit about my background. I was Director of Engineering for the Navy Lab Naval Surface Warfare Center before I retired and took on helping in the RDP organization, and actually came aboard just about the time we were really forming it. But if you look at that era, what it did was send a wake-up call that basically told us, we need a base support group. We don't want to get into this position again. And when I get into the presentation, you show the benefits of the base and all the things that are happening, and many of you know this, you'll see the value that we have here. But it was decided at that point that we needed to continue an organization that would be there to help grow the base, help support the base, help bring in new programs, help get military construction that is very difficult to get for places like laboratories, et cetera. So with that is why we exist. So our membership is made up of 2 county supervisors, 1 representative from each of our supporting cities. We have elected and federal and state officials that come. We have most of the college district, et cetera, the school districts. We have a forum for all of the things that impact the base and that the base impacts. And they all are members of our organization. If you look at our total membership, it's approximately 255 or 35 people. There are no dues to belong. Any citizen can become a member of the organization and support us. The partnerships are with the main commands at the base. And this is one of the things we set out to do when we had the BRAC was rebuild the base or build up the base. So it was so important you could never put it on the list. That little bumper sticker down there, examples, well, there's 100 commands on this base at this point. People don't realize what we have going here. But between the Hueneme site and the Point Mugu site, we have 100 commands. We set out a number of years ago, RDP, to build it to this point. In the last 10 years, we've brought from 70 commands to 100 commands. And we've just about filled up all the spots that are available. But that's a good story because when you look at shutting something down, what are you going to do with 100 commands? You got 100 commands you're going to have to move. And so that was one of our goals, and we're still working on that. We've not only brought in 100 commands, we've also brought in some of these leading projects that are the future of the Navy. We brought and become the center of all the unmanned work. That's both air, underwater, and surface unmanned vehicles. This is now the center, and that's because the lobbying that RDP did to go out and convince those programs they ought to come here, and that this is the place that they would get the best reception. Now, we couldn't have done that if we didn't have a great set of warfare centers here that were able to take and bring that work under and do a good job. But it's the effort we put into convincing those people to bring those projects here that's made us the center. We're a 501c4 organization. Our office is located in Oxnard, and we get financial support from the county and 6 cities, and you've been with us from the beginning. And I look back on some great trips over the time and look at some of the council members that I've got to meet, and starting with Tony Vellante. I imagine most of you know Tony, and John Sharkey is an example. But I did want to mention, we have had some of the best talent from this group that's joined us. Not only do they get involved and start to learn the business, but when they get so good that when we go to Washington, they're up there just defending the issues as well as we do often. And it's just a pleasure to see not only how talented they are, but how involved they are. And Laura and Martha, they got another winners here. They've already contributed so much. And of course, both of them were on our trip last year. We really appreciate it. Our general meetings are held monthly. We usually hold them over at the county center. They're on the first Thursdays of the month, 7:30 in the morning, and anybody is welcome to attend at any time. And that's where most of the major commands are represented there every time. Cal State's there, community college district's there, water district, all the people that have something to do with the base and base support and exchange of information. And so, but anybody is welcome to attend. Our strategic committee, and Laura's on our strategic committee currently, as well as many, and I'll show that in a minute. But they also hold monthly meetings, and that's where all the issue papers get written. That's where all the strategic planning for what should we do for the bases, how should we, what should we put priority on, etc. And to determine what those issues are, we do an annual visit to each command. And in fact, we're in that process currently. And we just visited the Airborne Command Group today. And we visited Surface Warfare Center, and we'll be at all the major commands. And we're getting ready for our annual lobbying trip. So what we do is go to them, and they basically just open up to us because they know they become our issues. We're not going to ever get them in the middle of it. But they tell us what's getting in the way of doing business here, what's getting in the way of them being able to accomplish their mission, and what things that they need that they just can't get through the system. And we decide which one of those are most important and take those on as issues. We've been very successful in accomplishing that, and I'll talk more about that in a moment. So what's the goals of the organization? Basically, to become that group that is actively supporting the base, determining the needs for the base, doing what the base can't do for itself, what the commands can't do for themselves, and making them able to be more productive in their mission, and take the burden of the politics off of them because they can't work those anyway, and foster a very favorable position for the base in the whole political system, and we've been very successful at that. Develop strong congressional connections, work with our state and regional partners, and doing that, I recently, 3 years ago, I formed a group in the state of California called California Defense Communities Alliance, which now we have a group that is a group of groups like us. We have San Diego, we have Beale, we have Travis, we have all of the Monterey. All of them are members of this new organization that we formed, so we can pool our resources together to help all of California's defense industry. And we just got that formed about, it's going on 3 years ago. Actually got the signing in the governor's office at the time. This is a quick look at the organization. You can see that the board and board members, again, each city has a board member that is sponsoring us. County has 2 board members, and we have a strategic committee, and you can see Laura, Laura is on our strategic committee, and Martha's on our board. This is the impact of NBVC. It's over $4 billion, almost $5 billion. It's 24,000 people employed, and we have 4,000 active duty. And that's going to grow considerably over the next, by 27, we'll have at least 800 more active duty people here. We've grown it to 100 commands, and we've reached this, just said that 4.6 billion. That's some of the recent things that we have accomplished, is working these issues to grow the commands, which brought that in economic level up. They're the largest employer of professional jobs. If you want the high-paying jobs, most of them are on the base. That's where all the scientists are hired. That's where all the engineers are hired. So when we talk about the employment of the base, you're talking primarily professional jobs, very high-paying jobs, and a large contribution to a community by those people. We recently worked on some time ago with the Coast Guard relocating to Point Mugu, and you know that's happened by now, and we're supported the getting their new facility to make them viable at Point Mugu. We worked on directed energy for a long time. Directed energy is the future. And we worked with those program offices prior to them becoming full-blown programs, and convinced the people back there that the place you want to put this is here. And now we have the only directed energy test facility in the Navy, and it's located at Point Mugu. And we also were able to get a part of that activity that will help that testing out on the island. So we are the Center of Directed Energy now for all test and evaluation for the Navy, because of being able to get that for the local base. And as I said earlier, we became the Center for Unmanned Programs due to some work that we've done over the last 10 years of working and going in and finding out which programs were coming and convincing the people this is the place you want to put those programs. And due to the when do you need a group like ours? Well, if you know anything about how the Navy works and how the military works, military construction to get new labs, et cetera, is very difficult for laboratories. Most of that money gets prioritized to the fleet and to the operational units. Almost all of the MILCONs that we've been able to get that the base I mean desperately needed to do their work, we had to get through plus-ups, which we lobbied for, and we had great senators in great positions and great congressmen in great positions, and we've gotten almost every new lab that's on that base through plus-ups, through the lobby work that we did. So some issue examples that we see happening now. We have a huge electrical problem. We have a base that was built in the 50s. Nothing's been done. You can't get the infrastructure money to fix the electrical system. That's one of our primary issues now, is trying to find the money for that, how we can get that, what approach we can use. And we've already made one visit to Washington on this issue. We've got some ideas. We're working with Naval Base Ventura County now on some possibilities that we might be able to use to move in that direction. But it's a very critical issue for the base right now is the age of the electrical power and the electrical grid. And that's one of the issues we're working on. The other one is we've got 800 sailors coming here on a new program called MQ-25 Stingray, which we worked to lobby to get here and have that program come here. It's a very important program. It's one of the new unmanned programs. It's the unmanned program that refuels the aircraft in flight. You can send this unmanned aircraft up and it will connect with the planes and refuel them. Very important program. And since we've got the program here, and when it comes on board, we're going to have that much additional growth, and we're working on trying to get funding and resources to meet that growth locally. And I won't read all of those, but there's a lot of issues. The bottom one is turned into a very big issue. You've all heard about SCIFs, I think, and security information. All of those requirements, since a number of things have happened, have been toughened. And there are now now none of our facilities locally, I say none, we have one area, but most of our facilities locally don't meet the SCIF requirements. And they do work in that arena, so that's a big issue that we're taking on to try to get the funding to improve so their SCIF facilities are up to the standards, the current standards. That's just some examples. Well, what are some of our future challenges? Well, we're always getting ready and making sure we don't get BRAC. We don't know if there'll be another BRAC, but you never know what the politics are. You never know what's going to happen. We're trying to continue to grow and make sure NBVC is so important and so full of activity that you couldn't BRAC it anyway. So we continue to build on that. And you can never let down, because the new programs come, programs go. What we're trying to do is make sure that we get the programs of importance here. So when the old program goes that was important, we've got the new program coming in. And this doesn't just happen. You've got to, I was director of engineering for the Surface Warfare Center for many years. I had to work hard to keep programs coming here from that standpoint too. It's never given that you're going to get a program. It's someone has been out working and talking to people and convincing them you should put the program wherever. And so it's a constant battle. It's something that we have to continually do if we want to see we want the future to be here. And right now, we've already received 3 of the major things that are the future due to the effort that we've done. That's just a few of the things that have happened. Many of you may not know, but in the Tony Vellante days when he was here, we got word that the Air National Guard said they were going to probably not be here in 4 or 5 years because they weren't getting the modern aircraft till 6 or 7 years later. And so we took that on, and luckily at that time we had people in all the right positions in Washington, and we'd done something that's never been done before. Nobody's ever accomplished this kind. We got them 8 C-130Js, which is the aircraft they needed to stay alive, and we got those as an ad. They weren't in the they didn't have a contract for them. We weren't going to get them, but we got them added to the budget and added them to the production line due to having the right people in the right positions and lobbying for, I think it was 3 to 4 years, but we finally made it happen. And that would not have happened without the work RDP did. That's just one example. We've gotten over $120 million in plus up for military construction that's got their new labs. If you go and look at any new lab, it's due to that. And with that, any questions?
Did I hear that you said that we have a directed energy test facility? Does that mean lasers?
Yes. Yes, it's located at Point Mugu, and we have a big lab there. And because of the sensitivity of that program, this whole lab is almost a skip. When I said we only have one area, this whole building, it's a huge building, is almost, it's up to SCIF standards because of the nature of that program. We also have the other end of the site. We got equipment and it's construction on San Nick Island, so we can do some of that testing across the sea into San Nick. You need a backstop, and the mountain there and everything. And yes, we do.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Only place that any of you has to do this too. The only place.
Thank you, Jean, so much for coming out tonight, and you too, Charlotte and husband. Thanks for being here tonight and providing us a good overview of what RDP does. Just for the benefit of our audience, can you tell them what SCIF is, what it stands for?
That's a secure, compartmentalized facility. What that means is there are programs with various clearance requirements. Now, you can go up to the secret level or even top secret, but you get into certain areas that are so secret, they call it compartmentalized. And that's one of the big stinks in our country right now, some of those documents. Those documents, you can't take a document out of the building. You can't take a note out of the building that you've taken. All your files have to stay there. It is so secret what you're working on that you have to do it in a room, and this room has to be built in a certain way that no communication can get in or out of the room. And it deals in the things that we're working on. And it just scares me to death when I hear that certain documents got taken. Because if you realized what these documents contain, any one of those could do so much damage to us. And some programs that we're working on that are far ahead of the enemy in technology, they could gain all of that information that we spent 15 years developing just by getting some of these documents. And it's a room where we can work on those kind of programs where disclosure or any information leaking out would be devastating. And that's what you do. We call it a SCIF. It's a secure facility for handling compartmentalized information.
Thank you,
Thank
Chief.
you.
Okay?
Any further questions or comments? Thank you so much for coming here today.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
for
you.
having us.
Thank you. See you soon.
Our final presentation will be the Public Works Annual Project Update, given by City Manager Vega.
And I'm actually going to turn it over to, but also make an announcement that we've appointed a new official, as of, I think it's today, Public Works Director for the city of Port Hueneme. And we didn't have to look very far. It's an internal employee who has 27 years of service with the city. And so to mark the start of his time as our official Public Works Director, he's going to give us a Public Works update for the coming year. So with that, Fred Camarillo.
Congratulations.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, Council, staff, and those of you in the audience. First off, I'd like to also thank James for having the confidence to select me. I know when James first got here, there was a lot of changes happening, not just within our department, but throughout the city. And I remember speaking to James when he first got here, and I told him that, you know, our department stood with whatever his decision was going to be. We wanted him to be comfortable with whatever his decision was, with who he was going to select as someone that is going to lead one of the departments that he was going to manage. So I'm just thankful for the fact that he recognized that he had confidence in what he saw in me. It was a long process. So it's been 7 months since he first got here, and I did the interim position. So I know it probably wasn't an easy decision for him, but I appreciate it.
Because you left out, you said not it. What's the next thing you said? But we got you.
So what we have tonight is not just an update on projects, but an update of things that have been going on since our last update, which was in May of 2022. So these are going to cover things that have gone on between May of 2022 up to today. So on this first slide here, you see a few things, resurfacing of streets, striping of our streets. We had Pleasant Valley Road from San Pedro to Jay. We also had Ventura Road from Surfside to Pleasant Valley, which was 5.8 line miles. We had a contractor do 33,000 feet of striping, and our own crews handled approximately 140 pavement markings. The legends you see, stop on arrows, the turn arrows, all that you see on the streets. And the resurfacing was over 500,000 square feet of resurfacing that was done during this time. Right there you can see some other things that we did. The beach parking lot restriping, we did that prior to our beach event. Also doing some work there in Hueneme Bay, doing restriping. The legend that says keep clear right there was part of, we had some incidents up on Channel Islands Boulevard. I'm sure you remember, because that was a big topic for a little bit. We had a traffic engineer do a study and make recommendations of what we could do to go ahead and try and help alleviate some of the problems that were happening there. The recommendation was to put that there to keep clear, because what he found was that people were trying to drive past with other traffic oncoming and not seeing them. So that set the limit for people to go ahead and stop and leave that open. There you see some sidewalk repair that we've done. We previously also mentioned new bus shelters that were placed. The Scott Street sidewalk that was done. Also with the new curb ramps with the ADA compliant sidewalk there. pothole repair that was done. The sidewalks, we had 31 sidewalk repairs. That was about $95,000 to repair those. 43 sections of pavement or pothole repairs. That was about $200,000 of work that was done. We also had there were some other improvements that were made to some of the bus stops where we had lighting installed, so it would make it easy for people to see them at night. So that was part of those bus stop repairs as well. Here you see I know you've all noticed the yellow reflective stuff on the traffic signals. That's a safety item to help people recognize the signal from further away. We've also done other signal upgrades with controllers, battery backup systems. We haven't fully completed all of that stuff, but it's all in the works to upgrade existing equipment. Picture there, fixing a storm drain that's on the Bubbling Springs corridor. We found a line that was starting to fall apart. So we made the repair for that so we didn't end up having any further damage going up on that line. On the bottom left there, you see the speed cushions, which you also are all very aware of. People request those all the time. Since 2022, we've had 19 placements on 7 different streets. And a placement is, we consider, because it goes from side to side in both travel directions. So 19 of those have been installed. And all that was done by our streets crew. As we've already heard a couple of times tonight, referring back to the storm, here's some pictures of what we were doing in preparation for the storm, during the storm, after the storm. We had constant contact with local agencies. We talked with the county, with the port, with some of our projects like Surfside Motel, who had active construction going on, making sure that things were in order to try and minimize any damage that may be done. But some statistics out of that, we have about 5,000 sandbags that we've given out. 387 tons of debris has been hauled away that was specifically from the storm, because we've tracked that separately. We also had a number of people lose things that floated away. We've managed to find everybody that was missing something and get containers back to them and get stuff redirected to them so they had the proper stuff that they had go missing somehow. So we still are dealing with requests. We're still getting requests today on getting containers emptied for people that are just now getting contractors that are able to get in and do the work that is needed to be done in order to fix the damage that was done. We suspect we'll probably have those calls coming in for a while still. So here we have some things that are for the water division. They've done, during this time, 15 mainline valve replacements, 46 service line repairs, on top of doing their normal duties of their valve exercising program to make sure that if and when we need to shut something down, it does, so we can do work on a line that needs repair. We also have water sampling, drought information, lots of information that goes out by our water division. And then you have on the left there where it says PHWA low flow bypass. That was a project because our water crew runs the Port Hueneme Water Agency. A couple of things they did there that they finished up. That is a bypass that we have estimate that this is going to allow us to use more groundwater, which is at a much cheaper rate than state imported water. So the estimate is that 60 acre feet will be purchased by being able to use this new system at a savings of about $60,000 annually. In addition to that, we also have a what's called take or pay, where if we don't use a certain amount of water, then we also get penalized. So by being able to use the groundwater, this particular project will also help us save about an estimated $23,000 in penalties. So, and then originally this was going to be something that we put out for a consultant to design, but our in-house engineering group said they could do it, and they did, which saved probably at about another $40,000 to $50,000 by being able to do that in-house. Here, I know we brought this previously. We had noticed a sinkhole that was developing in the area behind the Mary's Market Shopping Center there. So we made that repair. We found the line. It's faint, but you can see it on the right-hand side. There's a red line running through two houses right there. That line was connected to where the sinkhole was, so that's where we found the failure. So we were able to go ahead and get that corrected. And then while we were originally set to just do the line that was running behind there, we also found that that red line was also in need of repair. So while we had the contractor there, we decided to go ahead and make the repair to that line as well. So we didn't have any damage further and then have to go back into the same area. Our wastewater crew here, you see some pictures up there. We've done some pump rebuilding. Unfortunately, that one station there that had been done got completely flooded during the December event, so we're going to have to redo a lot of work that was previously done there. The sewer line cleaning, which is something that happens all the time, and maybe a lot of people don't think about it, but an important thing to remember about that when you see that truck out there doing their work, these guys have done their job so well. We haven't had a sewer spill in a few years. So those are things that a lot of agencies get plagued by. We're fortunate that our crews go out there and we've had the ability to prevent those from happening. You also see there some lift station maintenance that was going on at Seaview. That one is something that it's a normal thing that happens with our stations. We pull pumps to make sure their parts are fine, tear them apart, do all that. So we don't have problems when those stations are needed to run. They're very well taken care of. It's not on there, but the wastewater group also does stormwater inspections. During this time period, they've done over 1,000 inspections, and that's not counting anything that happens just prior to or during a storm event. That's just normal maintenance. That's stuff that we do to make sure we don't have problems. They've also done over 100 flood control station work orders, our pump stations, to make sure that they work when they're needed, and also 400 sewer lift station work orders with doing work similar to what's shown in those pictures right there. The organics, I know that's been something that's been going on for a while. We've delivered 2,500 carts. There are some HOAs that we are still working with to get something out delivered to them. We've got carts also on order, some that had already known what they wanted and requested a certain size. We were waiting until we heard from them, so we didn't buy a bunch of stuff and only to know that it was just going to be sitting there and wasn't going to be used. So we do have carts that are currently ordered. They should be in shortly, and then once we do, then we can start getting those out. We also have our commercial locations that we're going to be getting the carts out to. Those will be delivered March 1st, with the first service for those being March 4th. And all of this information has been communicated by our staff to CalRecycle, which is the state agency that oversees and regulates all this stuff. So they're made aware of where we stand, and they are working with us and have an update of where we stand with the carts and the organics program in general. Our landscaping division, lots of stuff. They have, there's 58 acres of Hueneme Beach. They take care of all the sand. They do all the different mitigations, especially when we have special events, like with the Alaska Memorial recently, we had that to make sure that things are pristine. We have 59 acres of open space they maintain. They have done a lot of work on the Bubbling Springs Creek corridor that's independent of the actual creek clearing that's been going on, which is 1.7 miles of the creek corridor. They also maintain all the irrigation for the parkways, the medians, everything in the park. So there's a lot that's going on for them, responding to wind events, rain events. So they have their hands full. The creek clearing itself, we've had 540 tons of the cattail and bulrush removed from the creek since it began. They're done for the year at this point. We'll be looking to go back again next year. The park project, the Bubbling Springs Park project, is going to prevent us from getting up into that area while that project is going on, but we can work on other areas downstream. And when the park gets completed, then we'll be able to go back and see what's happened during that year while it's not accessible. The engineering group, just some examples of some of the stuff that they do, they work on, they've designed in-house. They do plan checks. There's 14 projects that during this time that our engineering group has gone through and plan checked. Just to give some examples, the couple of our HOAs have wanted vehicle access gates, the bungalows, and harbor lights. So they've done the plan checking and work with them. The Surfside Motel project, they've submitted in multiple phases. So that plan check has been going on the whole time they've been doing that. There's been some port warehouse grading that was going on. That was done and plan checked for them. The grocery outlet, the beach swing set, which is going to be in another slide, and I'll mention in a minute, and our Pleasant Valley Storm Drain project, which was part of that line that I showed you earlier where we saw the sinkhole that was developed. This slide here is, as you remember, we went out to bid. We selected a tree contractor. They've been on board for a while now. They've been able to go through the entire city and categorize and inspect all of our trees. So you can see in those graphs there what they found as far as what we have out there, how many different species, stumps that have been out there, total trees we have, and it comes with a software program that we have access to, which is really, really helpful in being able to do things. It can identify areas. They've created districts for us so we can tell what it is. We know when the cycles are, and as they're doing it, they're updating things live. So when something's done, they're entering it at that point. So if we get questions from the public, hey, when does this happen? When does this happen? It's something that we can go back to in that system and be able to give them all the information of what that is that has been done. On top of that, there's been 825 trees already trimmed and 70 dead trees have been removed. Our fleet garage, they maintain all of the city's equipment, all of the fleet. They are responsible for doing things on commercial vehicles, which is reportable to the state, that they can come out and check us. CHP comes out periodically and does inspections of all of our records. They're responsible for making sure that those inspections are all done and that the vehicles are properly maintained. All of the other vehicles as well. In this time frame, they've completed over 1,300 different preventative or corrective maintenance work orders. And they keep, there's 2 of them. They're constantly challenged with trying to keep up with all the work, but they do a great job doing it. This slide here has a couple of things on there that I know that you council members have requested in the past. The flagpole replacement, that was completed. And in the picture there, you can see the posts that are kind of knocked over sideways there. That was when the accident happened. Those have since been replaced or fixed just last week, right? So that's all, that whole thing has been done and taken care of. It took a while to get that pole, but we did get it, and it is fixed and it's up. And the damage that was done for that accident has been completed. The fire pits, we've got those out. Fortunately, we've had a lot of rain, so I don't know how many people have had a chance to go out and really use them yet, but they're out. We've got notices up. Hopefully the public is paying attention and knows not to throw anything hot into the trash cans, and we've put there that they should be extinguished with water, do all that, just so we can make sure that they have their best understanding how to make sure that we keep those in use for a long time. The beach swing set, which is another thing, I know this just was asked, I believe it was last meeting. The design has been completed, which was done in-house. The survey for the site has been done. We're hoping to get the bids out for the concrete work for the construction of that here very shortly. And the surfacing on that concrete, the contractor that will put the protective surfacing on top of that has already been identified, but obviously the concrete work has to be completed before that goes on. And then there's the cross-track street lights there. Everything that has been our responsibility to get done is done. Right now we're waiting for Edison to get their contractor to order the poles that they require and then get them out there so that can be finished. As we've heard a few times before, Edison works on their own timeline sometimes, so we can't really give an estimate because we're at their mercy because they don't give us one. And on top of all those things I've already told you about, there's our Public Works Department is involved in all of these different events, not just in showing up and manning our Public Works booth or any of that, but also we are part of making sure that we have all of the proper containers for trash collection and service all that. For the beach festival, there's the vendors that need water. Our water division goes out, flushes, tests, and gets the water line prepared for them to be able to use. We give out tons of information about all the different things that are going on to try and let the public know what it is we're doing, what to expect, how they can do things, who they should call. So there's a lot of stuff that goes on. As you can see there too, with the tree lighting ceremony, the guys went over to the port with Recreation's help. They had it all set up and they got us on there, and when we came back and filled the trucks up with the crushed ice, and then they used the equipment to build the sled and set it all up. So a lot of different things that besides just working on sewers and water lines and street lights and stuff like that goes on there. I'm not going to read through all of these, but you can look and see. These are the things that are in the works. I think the biggest one, and it's not on this slide, but a couple of things that I will mention. We've got, and you've heard this before too, we've talked about the cross-space pipeline. we're calling it that still. It's going to be named differently as we get moving forward. But it's a project that we're going into with the Channel Islands Beach District. I think the big thing about that, one, it's going to get the same thing done, but more importantly, it's saving about $2 million by doing a different project. So that's going to be there. We've got, again, a bunch of different things that are on this list as well. We've got, we didn't get it on the list, but I will mention it. Hueneme Road. We are going to be doing a reconstruction of Hueneme Road. It's the worst condition of our roads at this point, so that's going to be a focus. We've shared that with James, and so he agrees that we need to move forward with that. Our underground fuel system is another one. We have to have that pulled out by the end of 1925 and replaced. Our current system is a single tank system, so California's put us on notice. All single walled tank systems, they have to be out and be replaced with a new system. So that'll involve a lot. We'll have to dig those tanks out. There'll be soil testing. There'll be all kinds of environmental work that need to be done prior to getting a new system in place. But that's another big one that we're going to be working on. And with that, I'll answer any questions you may have.
Thank you so much, Director Camarillo. We appreciate so much the work, the many hats that all of our departments and agencies wear, and so specifically to Public Works. You do many things for the city, and we appreciate the small staff that you have doing the great work that you do. I definitely notice a difference when I leave Hueneme and come into Hueneme to a city unnamed, I will not mention, and how different the view is, the streets. In particularly, I have a pet peeve about the lines that are made on the roads and the way the streets are lined, and so many streets are crooked and just, I don't know what they're doing. Are they doing it drunk? I mean, but our streets are so nicely done, and so I appreciate that. They always look great. Does council have any questions?
Yes, remember our joke, how do you know you're in Hueneme? The road turns good.
Yeah.
You mentioned Hueneme Road, there's going to be some work on it. I was just wondering, do you know what the total cost is for that rehab project of Hueneme Road is? I mean, just a general estimate.
You have any idea, Charles?
I think we had budgeted two
Budgeted
point
2 million.
something.
2 point something million?
You said 2.2? Yeah, that's what we budgeted, and well, go ahead. That's the answer.
Thank you.
Grants, I hope we're looking for.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say, Grant.
And congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
Forward to all the work you're doing, all the great.
Thank you.
I just had a couple of comments. Congratulations on your appointment, Mr.
Thank you.
Camarillo. Very happy that we could hire internally and promote you for the length of time that you've been here. You know, that's commendable. I wanted to ask you. The first thing I want to say is thank you to you and your teams for the storm response. I don't know that we've publicly said thank you to you all, but I know that you all worked very hard. Every division was doing something, especially your solid waste division. Thank you so much for all the hard work and working on holidays and everything that was just, and around the holidays. That was really special, so thank you. When you talked about the beach, do we regularly rake the sand on the beach, or is it only done for special events?
No,
like
it's done at other times, but once we get into the summer season, it's done more often.
Okay. I just heard I was reading some material, and they said sand raking is actually doesn't help with sea level rise. So I don't know if you've heard that, but it's just something that we'll probably learn more about as we start getting into our climate action planning.
Yeah, and for us, it's not, it's more for pulling all of the stuff that's inside and underneath that you don't see to sanitize the beach.
Right, okay. And then how many plan checkers do we have working in your plan check unit?
The engineering group is 3 people.
And do we have any EV vehicles in our public works fleet?
We do not.
I just recently heard that there's some grant funding available, reimbursement for vehicles, large trucks that are EV.
Yeah, and on ours, it's something that, it's dependent upon the size of the fleet and how many you're gonna be required to get. With ours, we have some time, because you can choose a track. So we're looking just, because one of the things that we would also need time to do as we move that way is to get the infrastructure in, because it's not just like plugging it into a outlet. So we need to get the infrastructure built to be able to accomplish that as well, to be able to charge the vehicles.
And then my last question, the vehicle that we used on the port, did that come through as a mutual aid request or an automatic aid request to position that vehicle there to help them with their flooding? And
It wasn't a direct mutual aid request in that sense. It was our crews realizing that getting in and access to that spot with our equipment was going to help our situation. It will help theirs too, but it was more important to try and prevent more from happening. And so we did that. And we have good working relationships with the port maintenance people, so they were more than happy to have us help them with that.
yeah, great, good job. Okay, thank you.
Questions? All right, we good? Okay, thank you so much again for your report.
Thank you.
So that concludes our presentations. We're going to move on to the consent calendar. We will now consider items on the consent calendar, which will be enacted in one motion unless a council member has a request to remove an item for discussion. May I have a motion and a second?
I have an item I'd like
Remove?
to pull, item number 5.
Okay. Any other items like to be pulled? Okay. You do a motion for,
Move to approve all the items on the consent calendar except for item number 5.
Second.
All in favor?
aye?
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Okay. Item number 5, go ahead.
Yes, and item number 5 in the minutes, I would like to respectfully request that the discussion on the RDP travel, that my title be, that it reflects my participation on the strategic planning committee. That I'm not listed just as an alternate, but that I'm also have the reference to my participation on the strategic planning committee.
Do we need to have a motion to approve that?
I would suggest motioning to approve the minutes with that amendment.
Correct.
Do I have a motion? We'd like to,
Move to approve the meeting minutes with the said adjustment from Councilmember Hernandez.
have a second? I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We're going to move on to public hearings. The first public hearing is the only public hearing, is the update to the cannabis ordinance. Madam Clerk, do we have proof of publication as required by law and a complete file of reports and exhibits?
Yes.
Thank you. Will staff please present the report?
And I'm going to introduce Tony, our Community Development Director, hopefully by the end of the meeting, our Community and Economic Development Director. That's in one of the other items, but Tony's going to take us through it. We had talked recently about changes to the cannabis ordinance to try to help our businesses be competitive with the new requirements from Ventura and Oxnard going into effect. And so this is sort of the return of that item to now implement some of those changes, but I'll let Tony walk through the specific changes.
Right. Thank you, City Manager Vega, and good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, staff, and audience. So this is a short presentation. It's a summary of what we talked about back at the November 20th a city council meeting where, after hearing input from staff as well as the public and members of our cannabis business community, the city council directed staff to make a few changes to our cannabis ordinance. And those changes, there are 3 of them, were to allow the expanded hours that dispensaries would be open to the public, and that would go from 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. To now being 8 a.m. to 10 p.m. The second would be to allow freestanding cannabis consumption lounges. As we're aware right now, we allow a cap of 5 lounges total. They have to be operated by a dispensary that's already been vetted through our process and operating here in the city. But currently, they need to be either within that dispensary or located immediately adjacent to it, such as the Skunk House and Wheelhouse, Skunk Masters and Wheelhouse dispensaries. However, we heard from a couple of our dispensaries that they would be interested in opening their own lounges, but they couldn't based on their current locations either being too small or being, so to speak, landlocked by other businesses. So this would allow them to have a freestanding consumption lounge, but it would still have to be operated by, again, an existing dispensary. We would still have a cap of 5 total. And the freestanding lounges would have to go through our standard process with the certificate of approval, conditional use permit, and development agreement for that particular location. And third, the city council directed us to allow dispensaries to conduct 2 minor temporary uses, such as having a food truck or a vendor's tent out in a parking space, for instance, twice a month without having a special use permit. After reviewing this and typing up everything, I also realized that maybe the consumption lounges should also be allowed to have that same 2 minor temporary uses, again, to allow them to draw customers similarly to what the dispensaries would do. And having only 2 consumption lounges open right now and having only 5 total at maximum build out if we get there, that shouldn't really be an impact on staff or the community. So again, the idea is to allow anything that basically help us within reason, help the dispensaries and the lounges bring in additional customers, which again is additional revenues for the city. So with regard to fiscal impact, there will be no direct fiscal impact from this action. However, it is anticipated that the additional means to encourage additional traffic and customers and therefore sales will result in additional revenues, not only from the sale of the cannabis itself, but also sales taxes that are generated with it. And so with that, this is the longest part of the presentation. It is recommended that the City Council open the public hearing and take evidence, close the public hearing and consider that evidence, then introduce for first reading by title only, waiving further reading of an ordinance entitled An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme amending Article 3 of Municipal Code to supersede Ordinance 784, which comprises Chapter 12, to implement various laws of the State of California by allowing medicinal and non-medicinal and or commercial cannabis facilities within the city subject to regulatory parameters that protect public health, safety, and welfare, and make a determination that the project is exempt under CEQA, and take additional such related action that may be desirable. Also want to note that if you decide to move forward with this evening, that staff anticipates that we will be bringing the second reading back at our next regular meeting, which is March 4th, and that will also be joined by the related implementing resolution, which will also talk to that reduction to 3% for the cultivation fees. So we're going to be discussing that at that point. And so with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm open to any questions that you may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Director Stewart. Does council have any questions? I have one, and hopefully it's not considered off topic, but it is about the lounges themselves. What's the current viability of the 2 that are open? How are they doing in terms of business-wise? And allowing for more to open, what does that look like really? Do we have enough interest in having additional lounges open?
Well, right now we haven't heard anything negative that they're failing. And they're still ramping up basically. So both of the lounges are taking separate tax to have different events and whatnot to attract customers in. Like I said, we had a couple of our existing dispensaries voice interest in opening their own lounges. Both of these are fairly successful dispensaries, so similar to the current dispensaries that are operating the 2 lounges we have. There's an expectation that they could have, again, some benefit to to bringing in additional customers, not only to their dispensaries, but also to the city. So I think keeping the cap, though, at the 5 would be recommended.
Okay, thank you. So now we're going to open the public hearing and take public comment. The public hearing is now open for public input at 8:20 p.m. Are there any public comments regarding this?
I have not received any public comments.
Thank you. With that, we are going to close the public hearing. Public input has concluded. I will now close the public hearing, the time being 8:21. We have before us a recommendation to introduce for first reading by title only, waiving further reading of an ordinance entitled, An Ordinance of the City Council of the City of Port Hueneme, California, amending Article 3 of the Municipal Code to supersede Ordinance 784, which comprises Chapter 12, to implement various laws of the state of California by allowing medicinal and non-medicinal and/or commercial cannabis facilities within the city subject to regulatory parameters that protect public health, safety, and welfare. Make a determination the project is exempt under CEQA, and finally, to take such additional related action that may be desirable. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
A second?
Second?
Thank you. Is there any further discussion on this item? Seeing none, can we take a vote, please?
Okay, this will be a roll call vote. So Councilmember Goma? Can you,
Yes.
Councilmember Martinez?
Yes.
Councilmember Hernandez?
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem McQueen Lejeune?
Yes.
And Mayor Perez?
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. We will move on to business items. The first business item will be the fiscal year 2023-24 mid-year budget review. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'm going to be introducing our finance director, Lupe Acero, to give a presentation on the mid-year budget. But as she comes up to speak, I just wanted to start off with a short introduction. I think I know it's later than I think we expected, and I apologize for the several presentations. So we try to keep those to a few fewer, but we had a couple time-sensitive ones, and we'll try to keep those briefer in the future. But I think it works because our finance director and I were talking before the meeting, and we were talking about this really tonight is intended to be sort of the check-in. The analogy I made, and I'm dating myself, but when I was learning about bank accounts and things like that, they taught it in school, and they gave you a checkbook, and you had to balance your checkbook, and they told you how important it is every few months to balance your checkbook and make sure that you're not writing more checks than money you're bringing in, and the importance of that. And tonight, what we were talking about is we're basically here giving a report, talking about we sat down, we balanced our checkbook, and here's what it's looking like, here's where we're at for the year, and here's a couple of small adjustments we're proposing and recommending we make to make sure that we keep that checkbook as balanced as possible. And so Lupe is going to go over some of the modifications and the adjustments we're recommending, and she's going to walk through the mid-year budget. So with that, I'm going to hand it over to Finance Director Lupe Acero.
Good evening. Thank you. Good evening, Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, members of the public, and staff. Tonight, I will be presenting to you the proposed mid-year budget adjustments. And as City Manager Vega mentioned, it is good practice to conduct the mid-year review, as it provides an opportunity to really take a look at the spending to date. In this case, we're looking at actuals from July, the beginning of the fiscal year, through November, and really taking a look at what are the actual costs, what are the trends that we're seeing, and making proposed adjustments. And it really sets us up for the next year's budget. So it sets the framework to develop the next year's budget. The city council adopted the 2-year budget last June, and that was the fiscal year 2023-24 and 2024-25. At budget adoption, the operating revenue for the general fund was projected at 26.9 million, and the expenditures at 26.6. There was a surplus, operating surplus of $356,000. And then there were appropriations for capital improvement projects of $3 million. And including those appropriations for the CIP, the deficit in the general fund to fund those projects was almost $2.7 million. And in the past, the city has not or did not have a separate fund for capital projects. And so these projects in the past were funded from unassigned fund balance. As I'll cover a little bit later, we have adopted a policy and we have funded that reserve. And we plan to continue to fund it to be able to fund projects going forward. Based on the review, like I said, of the 5 months and in some instances 6 months, because we did look at December actuals to make sure that we were capturing all the costs to date. The recommendation, and this is a summary, and I'm going to go through details of each one of these different components, were the projected increase in revenues is a net increase of $202,000 to general fund revenues, an increase in operating expenses of $316,000, a decrease in general fund capital projects of $285,000, and a decrease in stormwater CIP of $75,000. And the reason I listed that separately and why it's important is because in the past, stormwater has its own fund, but it doesn't receive enough allocation to pay for the cost, operating and CIP. So at the end of the year, what happens is there's a transfer from the general fund to zero that fund when it's negative. And then the last bullet point is salary savings, net salary savings of $380,000. And again, I'll go through that in more detail. The salary savings are not reflected in the budget because they're one-time savings. So these are savings from positions that were budgeted, but they were unfilled for a number of months during the year. On this next slide, you can see a summary of what the proposed budget is with these adjustments that I just covered. The operating revenue is proposed at 27.1, or an increase of 202,000 from what was adopted in last June. Operating expenses at 27 million, which are $316,000 higher than the adopted budget. And you can see the operating surplus is now $83,000, the proposed. Again, staff reviewed the capital project list as well, and taking into consideration the Bubbling Springs project, which is a priority project. There were some adjustments to the capital projects, and that brings the general fund deficit with these adjustments to roughly just $1.5 million deficit. And we're not including the appropriation for the Bubbling Springs is $4.8 million, but just to compare the adopted budget to the proposed, we excluded it. But you'll see on your Schedule B for CIP that the total under general fund is $6.4 million, because that includes the Bubbling Springs Park project. And this slide really illustrates the reduction in that gap in the general fund from almost $3 million at budget adoption, the revised budget at 1.7, and the revised budget is any adjustments that have been approved by council from the time of budget adoption. So there were some adjustments to CIP in September. There have been a number of adjustments throughout the year, expenditure appropriations. And then the proposed budget, again, it's roughly about $1.5 million short for this fiscal year. And so here is a more detailed summary of the adjustments to revenue. The most significant one is the property taxes. So property taxes, we're proposing to increase it by over $700,000. And the primary reason for that is that the city dissolved the redevelopment agencies last year, and we no longer contribute to the county redevelopment trust fund. So that was a reduction from our property taxes to fund the obligations from the redevelopment agencies. And so going forward, the city is not going to contribute to that trust, and therefore the property tax revenue is 100% flow through to the city. Interest revenue is the next large one, and that is our investments are performing better than we projected when we did the budget. We're seeing about a 4.5% return on investment for the general fund investments. And we had in the budget 2.75%, so it was a little bit conservative. And then offsetting the additional revenue is that negative $910,000 cannabis revenue, the 5%. And there's two factors that make up that $900,000. One is a reduction in sales. So we're seeing overall sales decreases of about 20%. So that's what we built into this proposed budget, a 20% reduction in sales, which is about $510,000 less in revenue for the city. And then there's also the second piece, which is the allowance of the excise tax. So we're allowing businesses to deduct the 15% excise. So that's it, reduce their reportable revenue by about $400,000 in revenue. Yes.
Did you say 510,000 on the cannabis revenue? Because on the slide here it says 910.
510 is from just reduction in sales. Sales are down about 20%. The remainder is because we're allowing the excise tax deduction. So now they can take a 15% excise tax from their reportable sales. So it reduces the revenue they report to the city. And the total of that is the 910,000.
Lupe, there was a question, I think, about the property tax item, and the when the city decided not to participate in the redevelopment agency trust fund, whether we expected this adjustment or
we increase property tax revenue, but not to this extent. So it's a complicated formula. Basically, the county has a trust fund for all of the cities that participate, that have redevelopment agencies, because those redevelopment agencies have obligations that they're funding, and the county provides the funding, so they collect the tax and then they disperse it to the cities that have obligations. And then any remaining amounts in that trust fund come back to the city as residual revenue. So that's how we used to get it before. We used to get residual, but it's all a factor of what the obligations are for the cities and the county. But to answer the question, we increased it. We did not increase it enough. We are, because we're not paying that obligation. So that those property tax dollars were being used to pay the bonds. Mm-hmm. So this next slide summarizes the expenditure adjustments that are being proposed. And so we went through with all of the departments and reviewed their budgets in detail. I have to say the departments were diligent in their spending, managing their budget this fiscal year, and in addition made adjustments based on their trends and changes that they were able to make to their budgets without impacting service levels, and reduce some of the line items based on, again, cost trends and expectations. And these are the line items. I grouped them by category. And some of these may be spent next fiscal year. So some of them are not just 100% reduction. They are going to take place, or they're going to be incurred. They may not be incurred this fiscal year. So when we prepare the budget for next year, we'll be adding those expenses to that budget.
Can you explain the Hideaway HOA maintenance fee reduction of $44,000?
Yes, so that is a reduction, expected reduction for the maintenance for the Hideaway properties. So what we did now, because we have a new software, the Tyler Enterprise System, we're gonna separate the HOA fees from the actual maintenance fees. So in the past, we grouped them together. So it was tougher to know. We grouped the HOA fees that we pay, the actual HOA fee and the maintenance together. We did a deep analysis of what those costs are. And based on what we paid thus far for maintenance, we're projecting a reduction in maintenance. So it's really not a reduction in HOA fees because those are fixed. It's a reduction in maintenance cost for the hideaways.
I'm still a little confused because it does say HOA.
Yeah,
I
we
know that
kept it because the account has both, but we're gonna be separating that. So in the next budget cycle, we'll have the HOA fees separate and then the maintenance fees separate.
So my understanding is that we own 9 units
Mm-hmm.
and we pay HOA fees like the rest of us pay our own HOA fees. So how is the city involved in maintenance?
The city also pays facilities, when facilities does maintenance at the properties. That gets charged to this line item as an expense.
I still don't understand, but
I can provide more details. I can provide more details exact on the specific line item.
Yeah, we could provide a summary. I think
Yeah.
in a nutshell, the units are city housing property units. So we do maintenance just like we do on Mar Vista or any of those units. And so it's just the anticipated costs of doing that maintenance. But we can provide a
okay, so the maintenance are the costs above the HOA fees.
yes. And
Yes.
so what's confusing, I think Lupe said this, we'll split it out in the future, but the line item in the budget says HOA or maintenance fees, but the increase that we're talking about is the maintenance costs. Not,
Thank you.
yeah. And then if I can just highlight on this slide, because I think this slide is actually a good example of what's frustrating doing a budget. And I'll say that because you can see up top that we basically went through budgets and we were looking for nickels and dimes that we could save. We were cutting $5,000 contracts, $10,000 supply budgets, things like that. And we scrounged up $415,000 in savings. And then you look below and there's $700,000 in new costs, and pretty much all of those except maybe one is just things getting more expensive. And I think we're seeing that more and more. The cost of business is increasing. The cost to do business is increasing. And so you see things like the $15,000 increase is literally the fee that for us to accept credit cards from people, the fees that we're paying just went up $15,000 a year. Pension costs, $176,000 a year. Vehicle maintenance and lease costs, $500,000 a year. The interest on the loan that we got to do our energy efficient projects went up $15,000 a year. So when you look at the bottom line and you go, wait a minute, but our expenses went up. I thought we were trying to save money. All of that is kind of factored into why we're looking at things so closely. And we are seeing that right now at probably historic levels, that costs are just going up to do everything we do. So we're trying to look at how to try to kind of minimize that as much as possible, because the revenues, even though we've been fortunate they've gone up a little bit, they're not keeping pace with the expenses. So it's just the challenge that we have to work on moving forward, that we have to keep in mind as we budget, is that things are going to get more expensive. So.
Thank you.
Any other questions on this slide?
Thank you.
And the next slide is the salary savings. So the net salary savings is $380,000. And you can see the total estimated salary savings is almost just shy of $800,000. And that's from unfilled positions that were budgeted and that were either that were vacant for a number of months. And you can see the departments, HR manager, finance. Finance, we had a manager position that we underfilled with an accounting position, so that generated salary savings. Public Works had a couple of positions, including the Public Works Director, that was not filled until now. And then for Public Works, it's the dollar amount that you see here is the general fund percentage, because their salaries are distributed to enterprise funds as well. And Police Department has had a number of vacancies, including 2 open positions they have right now. Their salary savings are pretty significant. And then down below, you can see the offsets to these salary savings. Some of it is overtime required because of the vacancies, offsetting some of the vacancies, some of the staff hours that are needed to fulfill those positions. The motorcycle that was previously approved, that was salary savings. There's a new appropriation that's being requested for a second motorcycle of $36,000. Traffic investigator crash data recorder, kind of like a black box, for $804,000. That's a new request, new appropriation. And then retroactive payments related to the POA, MOA, add-on pay. These were not available when we generated the budget. So these are the experience differential that are for POA based on number of years of experience. And HR has done a nice job of going through everyone and providing us those amounts or the years of experience and what the POA staff members are eligible for. So these have all been retroactive payments that have been paid this year. And the net of the two, so the salary savings have been are able to offset these expenses, and then the net will basically flow to the unassigned fund balance at the end of the fiscal year. So this next slide just really illustrates the changes in CIP, because we made adjustments to operating budgets, and we also adjusted CIP based on a review and prioritization of projects. The 2 new projects are and I think Fred mentioned it, the Hueneme Road reconstruction, that's a new project, and the appropriation is $75,000 for this fiscal year, and that's for the design work. I think they said it was $2 million, or a little bit over $2 million. And then the second new one is the Public Works fire main separation for the Red Mule property, and that's $45,000. And then the rest are reductions that are not necessarily reductions because the projects are not going to be completed, but they're really going to be completed next fiscal year. And here's a look at the estimated unassigned fund balance. So this is the estimated unassigned fund balance at the end of this fiscal year, based on the inputs and the proposed adjustments. I wanted to share the adopted, because when the budget was adopted in June, the beginning unassigned fund balance was estimated at $11.8 million. So there's a difference. We're estimating that to be $13 million. We have closed the books. We don't have the final audit report, but we're confident that we had revenues that exceeded what we had in the budget, and expenditures also came in less, and so we gained about $2.7 million. With that 2.7, that was part of the funding for the capital reserve, or 1.5 was transferred to start the capital reserve fund, and then the remainder is going to flow to the unassigned. And so basically on the fund balance adopted column, the 11.8 million, those are the numbers that I shared earlier. The 363,000 was the operating surplus. The CIP projects were 3,054,000. We do a calculation to transfer to these reserves, and I'll talk about the reserves in a little bit. So that was the adjustment of 28,000, and that was the estimated unassigned balance at budget adoption was $9 million. We're looking at, based on the proposed adjustments, $6.3 million. And like I said, what changed was the beginning fund balance increased because the performance for the city was stronger in 23. And we're estimating a operating surplus of 83,000, but we also have CIP projects that we are looking at funding of almost $1.6 million. And then the transfer to the committed is estimated at 363,000. And then there was a $4.8 million appropriation to Bubbling Springs. And this slide summarizes the city's general fund reserves. The city has established 3 different reserves. One of them is the economic emergency, and the target there is to have anywhere from 6 to 8 months of general fund operating expenses in the reserve. Right now, we're the calculations and the transfers that we've done have been 6 months. So we're at the minimum target. We are looking based on the proposed budget that economic emergency reserve will be $13.5 million. There's also a stability reserve, and that's 10% of operating expenses, and that's intended to stabilize the budget in case of an emergency, if you have one-time expenses. And then the intent is to replenish it if it's used. 10% of that is 2.7. And then the risk management is 50% of the liability, property, insurance cost. And so the committed reserves are estimated at 17.2 million. As I mentioned, we have a capital reserve. The city has a capital reserve fund of 1.5 million, and then the unassigned fund balance of 6.3. So those numbers are the estimated reserves at the end of this fiscal year based on the proposed adjustments to the budget. The enterprise funds, what I have before you is the summary of the adjustments in the package. I included the revenues and the expenses. Most of the adjustments are due to prioritization of the capital projects. So again, projects that are not going to be completed this year, but are going to move to next year or future years. You can see for water operations and wastewater, most of those reductions were related to projects. And the challenge that for enterprise funds operate like regular business funds, where costs are recovered through fees paid by residents, businesses who utilize the services. And one of the opportunities for the city is to really take a look at the enterprise funds, the infrastructure needs, the balances in the reserves. I know for a fact that for solid waste and wastewater, a study hasn't been completed since 2018. And so what the next steps for the funds are is for staff to prepare an RFP and hopefully secure a company, a professional firm, to conduct an analysis of the funds, including infrastructure, capital needs, and other costs. This next slide shows the fund balances, which are really their retained earnings for the enterprise funds. And currently, based on their revenue and expenditures. Their current year revenues are not sufficient to cover the expenses, so they're going to end up the year in a deficit, which will be covered by their fund balance. But again, even though some of the fund balances appear strong, we have to take a look at the future and what the infrastructure and capital needs are for those funds. And so we'll be looking at, again, conducting a rate study and analysis for the enterprise funds. The recommendation, that was the presentation for tonight, and the recommendation is to accept the mid-year budget report, approve the fiscal year 2023-24 operating budget adjustments, approve the updated capital improvement project for fiscal year 2023-24, approve the revised comprehensive pay schedule, and looking ahead, we have a couple presentations that we're going to bring forth to council, and one of them is going to be on funded liability, taking a look at the cost and how we can manage those costs going forward. The second presentation we're looking at is a presentation from HDL, our consulting company, on sales and tax, and taking a look at how those areas are performing in the city. They do a nice job of comparing the city to the county, to the state, but we want to look at how and what the opportunities are in the city, and which businesses or categories are doing good and which are not. And then last, we will be bringing the next year's budget before council for approval in May. So we'll be working after we finish the mid-year and start working on fiscal year 24-25 budget. Questions?
Thank you very much. And at this time, we're going to take questions for staff. So,
Yes, if I may, I'm sorry.
okay, go ahead.
On the unfunded liability, did I hear you say that the cost went up 176,000 this year?
Yes, the cost for the unfunded liability have two components. One is the normal pension cost, so it's a percentage of payroll. So as our payroll goes up, our costs go up. And then we also have the unfunded portion that we contribute and make a contribution every year. So that the 176,000 is a combination of both, but those costs are projected to continue to go up. And really, it's a factor of returns, the rate of return. 2 years ago, I think we were like 80% funded, because in 2021, returns were like at 20, they experienced a 21% return rate for that year. But yes, that is what that 176,000, that's the adjustment for this fiscal year for pension costs.
So what was the total cost for the year, including the 176?
The city pays roughly under $5 million, like $4.8 million in total. That includes the normal pension cost and the unfunded liability.
Right, I recall a newspaper article about 5 years ago that projected that I think in another 6-7 years that we'll be exceeding $4 million a year.
Yeah.
There's a schedule, right? We could see where we're headed.
That's
right?
what the presentation will cover. But yes, our costs in total are.
Look forward to that. Thank you.
Yeah, and that's actually what I was going to jump in and say is that one of the things, we have some contracts with sort of experts in fields. The HDL is sort of the state expert on sales tax and TOT taxes. And then I'm thinking GovInvest, right? Okay. GovInvest is sort of the state expert in unfunded liability, and they can come show you the different charts and show you if you pay the minimum, here's what it looks like, and here's what you'll end up paying 20 years from now. And if you pay a little more than the minimum, here's, almost like your amortization schedule on a mortgage or something. And so we were talking, and we want to have those our experts that we contract with for those services actually come and do those presentations at council as the lead up to the budget. So that's those presentations listed at the bottom, and we're working to bring the unfunded liability presentation in March to have that discussion. So.
Thank you. Any other questions? Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Cerro, for your presentation. And I sent really late, I apologize, a set of questions on the report. Thankfully, you answered a lot of them for me, so some of them was just my lack of understanding of the budget. But I do want to know, in this recommendation, we're approving a motor officer or motorcycle, right?
Yes.
And
oh,
we're
go
also
ahead.
approving a position, promotion for
So there's
the Community Economic Development Director, which I didn't see anything mentioned in the report about that.
Yeah.
So can you
yes.
want to talk to that?
So there's 4 items. Almost everything in this report is reductions that we've made, or like I said before, just things where cost of doing business has gone up. There's 4 items that we listed as actual adjustments that we are proposing to make that are one-time expenses. And the 4 items are, first, the traffic accident recorder, which is, essentially when there's an accident, being able to plug in and get traffic accident data to help aid in investigations and things like that. And that was, I'm going to just estimate it because I won't get the exact number right, but about $25,000 one-time expense. Second was the second motorcycle. We wouldn't have to add a new position or add an officer. It would just be an existing officer. And so it would be a second motorcycle at $36,000. And we do have some of the statistics on the positive impact we're seeing from the first motorcycle that I could provide as well. Third is the adjustment to from the community development director's position to what will now be a community or what is recommended to be a community and economic development director position. If you recall, the city previously had a contract for about $50,000 a year for an economic development consultant. And so we are, as we roll out the economic development plan and we're preparing that, the community development director has taken the lead on that and really has done a great work with that project. And my hope is that they will continue to take on that project and actually roll out the implementation of that project. So the proposal would be to adjust that position with about a 3.5% increase. And it's just a way of what we're looking to do a lot is we're looking to do things more efficiently. So in the past where we had a $50,000 position, now it would be about a $6,000 adjustment, and we would not have the $50,000 contract. And so there's the third, and then the fourth is the adjustment back on the overtime for the police department. It's adjusting it back to the prior level. I think the idea this year was going to be if we filled all of the positions, we wouldn't need the same overtime we had in the past. We haven't filled all the positions yet. We have 2 positions still vacant. And so the vacancy savings from just the police department would pay for all of those things, and then we'd still have a little bit of savings. But we're looking at those as being the 4 actual enhancements. Everything else is a reduction or just a cost of business going up.
Well, thank you for that. I appreciate the justification on the Community and Economic Development Director, because it was not in here. It was.
Yeah, my apologies. I think we were trying to keep the report brief, and I think we ended up at 10 pages.
And the impact for this fiscal year was minimal, like really insignificant. I think that was kind of the thought. We probably should have included it, but yeah.
And then, can you provide more justification on why we need a second motorcycle?
Sure.
And how is the first one performing? I know he hasn't been out there very long, but do we have any stats on?
Yes, and can you pull up the PowerPoint, the one for later in the meeting? My PowerPoint. And we just have a couple of slides, and it'll be slide 4. or 567. This is information for later. Yeah. So the motorcycle's been out for about 3 months now. So it's not the largest sample size in the world, but I think what we're seeing immediately is we're seeing a positive impact from the traffic, the motorcycle enforcement. We also coupled this with the things like the speed limit reduction and some other improvements. So we're making a concerted effort towards traffic improvements. But we have a couple of simple statistics here based on those 3 months. First, total citations issued. The 3 months prior to the rollout of the motorcycle enforcement, we had 112 citations issued. The 3 months prior, we had 261. So a very large increase, 133% increase. And a majority of, or a big chunk of those are speeding citations. Can you go to the next slide, please? Total speeding citations, 16 in the 3 months prior to the rollout of the motorcycle enforcement, 70 speeding citations since. That's an increase of 338%, which I had thought was a typo the first time I saw it. But and then just next slide, please. There's just one more. And this is a big one, and we were talking about this. Sometimes these things don't quite correlate because sometimes traffic accidents, there's a fluke or, you know, a distracted driver or something that you just can't help. But we're looking at all our statistics and we're seeing a very small sample size, but a noticeable reduction in traffic collisions. And even just anecdotally, we were talking about it that, you know, 6 months ago, it was every day it seemed like people were complaining about an accident or a near accident, particularly on Channel Islands and on Ventura. That it really seems to have made an impact just on that, the way people are perceiving that and seeing the traffic work in that direction, so, or in those areas. So our collisions have dropped from 53 collisions in the 3 months before motorcycle to 41 in the 3 months after, so a 31% decrease. And again, just anecdotally, we're getting a lot of emails and positive comments from people who are happy to see, sounds kind of funny, but people that are happy to see cars getting pulled over and happy to see, we had somebody send a picture of one of the officer, or of the officer kind of hidden in an alley, and they were just like, this is what we want to see. So I think people are liking that visibility of that. And so these are some of the statistics we have. I know we've also identified some other issues that we haven't reported here, but you know, we've had things like DUIs that were caught by the motorcycle officer that we probably wouldn't have been able to pick up or catch without that motorcycle officer being there. So I think there's these are like the easy statistics to provide, but there's some intangibles out there too. So we have that information. I know we do have our sergeant who's oversees the traffic team right now, and so if there's any specific questions, we could ask them for some. I'm sure they'd be happy to answer questions as well.
That was sufficient for me. Thank you very much. Yeah. The last question I have, well, I have more, but I'll give everybody else a chance to ask, is when you went to look for reductions, did every department suffer a reduction? Every single department? Was it across the board?
Well, I think
or were
if
only
it's
certain departments? Or
I think are you asking a specific category? Because I think your question earlier was about a specific category, right? Travel reductions?
Training and travel?
Okay. Because I was going to say big picture overall, just all expenses, I think we did find reductions in every department. But I know the question earlier was specifically on the travel and training budgets. It was almost every department had reductions in travel and training. The department that didn't was the police department. But there's a couple reasons for that. And one is that per person, they already had one of the lower travel budgets. Because we have some departments that had about the same travel budget for 3 or 4 people that the police department have for dozens of officers. And then secondarily, as we talked about it, going through the the budget, they've had new officers coming in, and we didn't. It's the saying that comes into my head is the penny wise, pound foolish saying, where we didn't want to try to save a couple bucks on training a new officer and have it turn into a bigger liability or a bigger cost down the road. So, so as far as the travel and training budget, that department was not reduced, but they still have one of the lowest training budgets per person at this point.
Would that be because some of the courses are post-reimbursable?
I don't think that, well, I guess I'll ask Lupe, but I don't think that impacts our budget because
Some
they're
of them are,
expenses.
but no, and I think to answer just in general, not just travel, I mean, my direction or when we went through the budget with departments was, we knew we had to reduce. I mean, we're in a deficit, but we have to reduce, but we don't want to impact operations. So we didn't have to go to that extreme, if you will, because everyone went through their budget, and in some cases, like you see the consulting services, contract services, they had either hired someone, so they had planned for contract labor, but someone had been hired on, they hadn't used as much. So it was more of a factor of how much have I used so far, what do I expect the rest of the year. For travel, again, every department was a little bit different because they had different budgets and different, depending on when we generated the budget, you know, there were some departments that had a new staff. All staff was new. They were planning to send them to training. Maybe they haven't done it, or they found, I know one of the departments found online courses, so they're not physically traveling, so they were able to say, well, you know, I can reduce my budget because we're not going to send people out. So it wasn't across the board. Something that we can start looking at more standardized travel per person. I know some of the large companies do that when they have large, large organizations, but I think it's just because every department is so different and the needs are different. But it was the same for travel and other line items. We really went through it, and I wanted to make sure the departments were comfortable to still be able to continue operations. And I think they were pretty diligent in looking at.
Well, one of the reasons I zeroed in on training and travel was, you know, we're going to be talking about a goal to provide best levels of service for residents and businesses. And training is so important. It's, you learn best practices. There's legislative changes all the time. We need to keep abreast of those. And we just heard our HR director talk about our people are our most valuable asset. So to take training away I think is something hopefully we can remedy later on down the road, and maybe get a more accurate assessment of what training and travel costs are per department, and reinstitute and support training and travel for people. So.
Yeah, I agree. That's something we don't take lightly, and I think when one of the first conversations we had with our new HR director was talking about doing some, looking at some options like the virtual trainings and things like that can be done for a lot more budget consciously.
And our CJPIA offers a lot of the training for free, so that was some of the offsets to having to send people in person.
Okay. Do you have any questions?
So my question is.
Hold on.
Oh.
Mayor Tim, do you have a question?
Thank you, Ms. Cicero, for your report, and City Manager. So just want to make sure this was through November.
We pulled the report through November because we started working on this like in January, so we hadn't closed December. But when we were going through the information with departments, we were able to pull actuals, like live information, just to make sure that we didn't miss anything.
Thank you. And for your proposed adjustments, you just use trends? Okay. Forecast, yeah. And so I would imagine we may be here in the next 3 or 4 months talking again, so we shouldn't feel like we're being whiplashed if the numbers change, because things change in the environment.
Correct.
So, okay.
Correct. And I think we're 3 months, well, actually, sooner than 3 months, we're going to start talking about the budget. But we're 3 months from basically being ready to adopt our revised next year's budget. Our interim budget, whatever we call it. and so we're going to talk about it again in 3 months. We'll have 3 months more of data, so things may change or things may not. I feel like we're kind of in that spot where I don't expect much to change right now. But we're going to talk about it again in 3 months, and we'll have the opportunity to look at more things in that time. So.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the detailed work. Okay.
So I just want to be clear that employees are receiving the training that they need as they need it, and we didn't eliminate training, we just cut back on training. Is that correct?
We looked at alternative ways of getting training. In some cases, due to schedules, staff is not able to go this fiscal year, so some of those expenditures will be rolled into next year. So if someone wasn't able to go this fiscal year, they're probably added to their budget next year. Yes.
Any further questions? Thank you. Are there any public comments?
No public comments.
Great. The recommendations are to accept the mid-year budget report, adjust the fiscal year 2023-2024 operating budget as defined in the fiscal year 23-24 proposed budget amendments, approve the updated capital improvement plan projects for fiscal year 23-24, and approve the revised salary schedule converting the city's community development director position into the community and economic development director position in order to allow the position to absorb tasks previously handled by an outside consultant. May I have a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. I'd like to add a final comment before we go. I support this budget, and I appreciate the work that has been put into this, all staff working together to make sure that they do their best. I want to commend James for, he came into the city, found out that we had a $3 million deficit, and he said he was going to cut the budget, and he did. He cut it in half. So I appreciate the work that was put into this. The only thing I would ask for is that when possible, as everyone has stated, training is very important to every division in this agency, that I would ask that we have a increase in where appropriate training budget that's necessary for everybody.
I think I'm hearing that consensus from everybody. So as we start to plan the budget the next budget, we're going to make sure to talk to the departments and make sure we're all planning for that. So.
Thank you. Okay. Mm-hmm.
I forgot to mention that with those positive statistics with the motor and traffic, it might be a good idea to do a press release out. I think it's really good information to put out there that in the city of Port Hueneme, we're trying to keep people safe and from speeding, and we all hear the cars. Maybe we don't hear them so much anymore, but I'm really impressed. I'm really thankful for the effort and for the drive that Chief brought to this and bringing it to the reality that we have. And so
Might be a good entry for the newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think when the council adopted those prior traffic improvements, the speed limit changes and things like that, we had done a press release and we said that was step one, so we can do an update on step two and include it in our newsletter and things.
Maybe
like
a picture with both officers by their bikes.
that. Yeah.
Okay.
once the word gets out,
Mm-hmm.
slowing down.
All right.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The final hearing we're going to have is on item 18, City Council Goals. Will staff please present the report?
Mayor Perez?
There's
Oh.
one other item,
Item number 17.
Sorry.
but I know it's getting
It's
late.
a
so-
long night. I'm
Yeah.
tired. My brain. Sorry. Item 17 is City of Port Hueneme Pier Gate options.
Yeah, and I'll keep it I'll keep it as brief as everybody wants to keep it. We had a request that I think it was the last meeting I think the idea was with a couple of things coming up, like the Memorial Day event and things like that, could we talk about options to make the gate more aesthetically pleasing, or talk about installing the permanent iron gate at the pier? So we went back and we started to look at the past reports and kind of get everything in order. And as we started to do that, we looked at the crime statistics from over the last few years, and they're in the report. And it jumped out to us, I guess, when the numbers are exactly the same, it tends to jump out. But that in 2019, the year before COVID and the year before, I think, any discussion of the gate or anything like that, that we had 41 calls for service to the police department from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. And then that last year, the first year really coming out of COVID, we had 41 calls for service from 10 p.m. to 7 a.m. So adding the gate and all that, we ended up having the same calls for service. So it led to an internal discussion we had just of like, well, you know, we kind of added this during COVID, and during COVID everything was different, and it's hard to kind of compare apples to apples, but we aren't seeing that now it had any measurable impact from the year before COVID. And we were talking about, you know, do we think it does? You know, what kind of impact is it really having? And so that just led to the discussion of, rather than invest money right now and tying into, we were doing this at the same time as the budget and looking for some savings, rather than investing money, you know, we basically proposed an alternate path. Let me go back and say, rather than invest money, but also time, because right now the other complication with trying to get a nicer fence in between now and some of these events, Memorial Day events and things like that, is that, you know, we've also had the unexpected storm, which impacted this building, our police department building, our community center, the library, the Boys and Girls Club. So our facilities staff is stretched very thin as well. And so we talked about, you know, essentially, I think there was a consensus among the staff that rather than try to figure out how to install a new gate or spend time to make the gate look a little better in the meantime, that since we don't see any measurable impact in the crime stats in that period, that we proposed removing the fence and then still measuring the calls and tracking all those things. And then if we see a problem at that point, we can come back a year from now, 2 years from now, at whatever point we think we see an issue, and we can come back and we can talk about installing the permanent fence if it is needed. But for all of those reasons, you know, we didn't see statistically the need that would justify the cost and the expense and the time of doing, like, rushing a fence in at this time. So our recommendation was to do that, to receive the update and direct staff to remove the chain link fence and track statistics and return if we see an increase in calls for service in the future.
Okay. Does council have any questions for staff?
I think I do. So when this item first came up, I wondered how officers respond to incidents that are at the end of the pier. How do they drive a car onto the pier? How do they get down there? Because my concern is officer safety if we're going to open up the pier and you get a call that's down toward the end versus the entrance.
You
How's that
can
handled?
drive, but most won't. And then there's an option for 2 officers to walk down. Also, if you recall, we brought back bike patrol. So you're not going to see me or anybody else probably February in the evening riding down there on the evenings.
Right,
But
right.
when summertime comes, the nighttime bike patrol will be back.
Okay.
And that's when we're going to have a focus on the pier with bike patrol. It's actually a very safe stealth approach to go down there. So there's that. If there was another emergency and your motor team, which we just approved is working late, they can get down the pier pretty quickly.
Excellent.
Too.
Okay.
Because they're, motors are great for bike paths and everything. So when you need them.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we're trying to build out the camera system that's down there, and we have one now for monitoring, but we're trying to build this out now that we got some folks at the PD that are taking a look at the current investment on that system and how can we expand it. So.
Yeah, I've been a little frustrated with that camera because I recall when we were first here on council, Councilwoman Hernandez and I, when that camera was put in, there was a lot of big promises made that, oh, we're going to be able to keep an eye on the pier. So my hope is that we could get it operational and always be able to have a visual on the base of the pier. And then I was thinking about this, and if there's some knuckleheads down at the end of the pier causing a problem, there's nowhere for them to go. And if there's a gate on the pier and they're not going to jump the gate, but they could go all over the place. And so it seems like it might be, in the event of problems, that, you got them cornered. But
the pier's been there for decades, and we've been able to police it even when I was a young officer in this town. So we will continue to do our damnedest to police it. And so what we'll do is we'll take a look at the study at the end of having it open through another normal summer post-COVID, and we'll see what happens. So we're here. We'll figure it out.
Any further questions?
I just wanted to ask, so you support opening up the pier?
I do, for the general reason. I've had great discussions with the city manager on this, and our E-staff team, our whole team has great discussions. I got to tell you, all the department heads, Fred, everybody, we sit in there and we have really heartfelt conversations about services to the city, and that's one of them. And it's like, well, what can we do as the PD to step up and support this? So I support the fact that I got data that tells me 2019, 41 calls, and 2022, 41 calls. I'm like, we'll figure it out. Let's give it a shot, and we'll police it. And as the weather gets warmer, you'll see maybe some more bike patrol at night. Thank you for supporting bike patrol too, folks.
So are we opening that up then 24/7? Is that what we're doing?
Yeah, and that was the last thing we were going to say. So the proposal would be removing the gate, reverting back to the 24-hour open. We now have the parking lot gates that we didn't have in the past. So the idea would still be closing the lots B and C, but leaving lot A open for the pier.
That does make things easier to police too.
Yeah, so it's an improvement over what was available 4 or 5 years ago.
And there's a whole culture of folks, as you know, an older fishing culture that wants to get on that pier early in the morning. So we'll be there for them.
Any further questions? Oh, good.
And so even with the 24 hours, we're still requiring parking permits?
Yes.
And the police are out there making sure people have parking permits?
Yeah, there's several of us can write tickets, so it's not just parking enforcement, but the police officers can write parking tickets too if they need to.
Okay, great, thank you. And by the way, I didn't know that there was a gate on the pier. Is there a
No.
gate?
Been there a few years.
It's kind of like a Grand Shack.
Is it closed at night?
Yeah.
It's a fence.
It's like a dog run.
Yeah. Okay, any further questions? All right, are there any public comments regarding this item?
No public comments.
Thank you. So the recommendation is to receive an update on Port Hueneme Pier gate options and direct staff to remove chain link fence and track statistics to determine whether a permanent gate is needed in the future. May I have a motion and a second?
Motion.
Second.
Thank you. Any further discussion? All right, can we please take a vote?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. And now we are at the final. City Council goals. Will staff please present the report?
Yes, and part of the report was going to be that it's not unusual on a goal-setting discussion to have multiple conversations, and oftentimes step one is sort of setting a workshop for a future meeting and kind of stating if there's anything specific desired for that workshop. But I think because of the lateness of the hour, I'm just going to start with that and say we may want to just kind of agree to set a date and have a basic workshop. The report notes that we went back and we pulled some of the prior reports and we looked at the goals that had been established and we kind of synthesized those and updated them. And so we started with 5 goals that are on page 1 of that report. Those are there for discussion, there to kind of be a starting point. But again, the thought would be, I think especially at this point, setting a workshop, and if there's any specifics on what we'd want to do at the workshop, kind of figuring that out, and then and then we can start with those goals and try to expand on it from there, and really come up with our key goals and our key projects for the year. So with that, I'm happy to answer any questions or go kind of as far into that discussion as we want, or set a time for a future workshop.
I think that's a good idea. I would like to request an amendment to one of the goals. For item goal 4, I would like to add the word inclusive to the goal. If
To the type of
council
community.
will agree with that.
Can we have it up on the screen?
We do have some public comments for this item.
Okay, let's get to public comments then.
And then I would, okay, we'll do.
Jasmine Duran.
Hello, dear Honorable City Council. My name is Jasmine Duran, and I'm the Advocacy and Community Impact Coordinator for Autism Society of Ventura County, and I'm here today representing our Advocacy Committee, which is comprised of parents, educators, and advocates, and we work to engage elected bodies throughout Ventura County regarding issues impacting the autism community. I'm here today on item 18, City Council goals, and as Misty Perez already mentioned, there's one small yet impactful suggestion I'd like to present, hoping it might resonate with your hearts as much as it does mine, as well as many other parents in our community. I would like to propose adding the word inclusive to the third goal, making it to read to ensure a safe, secure, inclusive, and beautiful community. Inclusivity isn't just a policy or a goal, it's a promise to our children and every member of our community that they will be seen, heard, and valued. It means creating a space where where differences are celebrated and opportunities are accessible to all, regardless of one's abilities, race, gender, or identity. This commitment to inclusivity is the cornerstone of a community that thrives on empathy, understanding, and resilience. Port Hueneme is blessed with diverse cultures and seemingly unlimited potential, stands to gain immeasurably by embedding inclusivity into its foundational goals. While I appreciate the strides you've already made towards inclusivity, making it a formal pillar of your goals sends a powerful message of unwavering support and commitment to creating a community where every person who calls Port Hueneme home feels included. I urge you to consider making inclusivity not just a part of your goals, but the lens through which all decisions are made. If you have any questions about our committee or would like to connect, please email me at advocacy@autismventura.org. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We have 2 written public comments. The first one is from Joan Tharp. Dear Mayor, Mayor Pro Tem, City Council, and staff, regarding item 18, City Council goals, particularly number 5, develop strategic partnerships, I emphasize the significance of strengthening partnerships, especially amid challenges like climate change and sea level rise. Success hinges on focused goals aligned with our strategic plan pillars and general plan objectives. While I appreciate existing ideas, I urge consideration for sea level rising planning, crucial for Port Hueneme, Oxnard, the Port, and the Harbor District and Naval Base Ventura County, Point Mugu. Our strategic plan emphasizes a safe, secure, and beautiful community, prioritizing emergency preparedness, breach preservation, and erosion prevention funding. Similarly, our general plan underscores addressing sea level rise and climate change. Thus, I advocate for inclusive goals that extend beyond sand replenishment to effectively tackle climate change impacts through partnerships. Thank you for your consideration. Best, Joan Tharp. The next one is from Ashley Pope, President of the Autism Society of Ventura County. Dear Honorable City Council, my name is Ashley Pope, and I am the President of Autism Society of Ventura County, as well as the proud chair of our Advocacy Committee. Our committee is dedicated to engaging with City Council, School Board, and County Supervisor meetings to contribute our voices and insights on disability and autism within our community. Today, I write to express our thoughts on item 18, City Council goals. I want to start by commending your efforts in setting these goals. Despite Port Hueneme being one of the smallest cities in our county, your ambitions and your voting records reflect a commitment to building a stronger, more united community. We have one small yet significant suggestion that we believe could make a profound difference, which I will outline below. Goal 1, to provide best levels of service for residents and businesses. Goal 2, to develop fiscal and economic excellence. Goal 3, to promote innovation and opportunity. Goal 4, to ensure a safe, secure, inclusive, and beautiful community. Goal 5, to develop strategic partnerships. Inclusivity is a principle that ensures everyone, especially those who have historically been excluded due to race, gender, sexuality, or ability, belongs. It means creating environments where all individuals feel valued, understood, and included, ensuring equitable access to opportunities for every community member. This commitment to inclusivity is vital for fostering a healthier, more cohesive, and resilient community. Port Hueneme, with its rich culture and diversity, has much to gain from embracing inclusivity more explicitly in its city goals. While we recognize and appreciate that your current commitment to inclusivity already surpasses that of many elected bodies, formally embedding this principle into your goals would reaffirm and strengthen Port Hueneme's dedication to a welcoming and inclusive community for all. We kindly ask you to consider integrating inclusivity more prominently into your city council goals, ensuring that it becomes a foundational aspect of Port Hueneme's identity and future endeavors for many years to come. Thank you very much for your time and consideration of our recommendation. Sincerely, Ashley Pope. And that concludes public comment.
Thank you. So then I would like to do a motion to amend Goal 4, adding the word inclusive.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Any further?
Yes. So we heard from the Navy tonight about all the wonderful things we do to support them. And I didn't hear from the Navy all the wonderful things they do to support our city. And I say that so that we could come up with a new way of collaborating with the Navy to work towards the issues that are important to our residents. And then similarly, with the Port of Hueneme, you know, I went to school right across the street from 3rd to 5th or 6th grade, and there was nothing going on at the Port of Hueneme then. And then in 1980, they started importing cars, and then we have these outdated revenue sharing agreements that we haven't visited in a very long time. And so I think what we need to do is come up with a new way of collaborating with both the Navy and the Port of Hueneme so that we could express the desires and interests of our residents. And I feel like we all, so when I first got elected, we had a joint meeting between the port and our city council. I thought it was really good. I mean, and collaboration oftentimes is difficult. You look at any successful marriage, a lot of collaboration. And it seems like we don't have equal collaboration, that we don't have a true partnership being the host city for the port. And so I hope that we could come up with a framework where we could sit down and have real conversations with the port about real issues, because right now we can't. It's extremely difficult. We have a port standing committee of two members, and you know, we just get feedback. We don't get to provide input. So on this item, how can we change the ways we collaborate with the Navy and the port? That's what I'm looking for, so that we could all have a very intense conversation so that we can engage our community partners and try to figure out how to have a vibrant, healthy partnership between the two entities. So
I think that's a very good point, and definitely something we need to talk about when we get to goal number 5, to develop our strategic partnerships.
So this item will then, what's going to happen after we close this meeting? Because I was all excited like you. Like you sat here all night for this. And I was all excited, thought we were going to go late till 12, and then you cut us down. So what's the next step so that we could have a energetic, exciting, collaborative meeting?
Well, I think you're hitting on, we said in the report that as we were going through the first 4 goals, a lot of that is really like staff-driven work, and council's providing that guidance of, we want the customer service improvements, and then staff is working on customer service improvements, and we want a balanced budget that funds all the things we need it to fund, and staff is working on those budgets. Goal 5 is the one that I kind of came to the same conclusion on, that it's like we really need that direction from the council on the strategic partnerships. And I'll give an example, because we've recently had requests for 3 items, and one was to agree on talking points for the Navy, to talk about a committee with the city of Oxnard, a joint committee with the city of Oxnard, and at one point, I think it was, there was one about talking about collaboration with the port. And so those are ones, like, as staff, the first question is, it's like, what are we trying to accomplish with those, with each of those items? And I think that we need to sort of, my suggestion is we have a workshop and we really focus it on goal 5. We can get into the other goals if we need to. And I think mostly at this point I could report out on the things we're doing on goals 1, 2, 3, and 4. But goal 5 is the one that really I think the council is going to have to discuss, sort of like, what are the things we're looking to accomplish with the port this year? What are the things we're looking to accomplish with the Navy this year? And then if we can get that, then both the council and the joint committees and the staff can then go out and actually try to get those things done. But, just as an easy example with the port right now, I'm like, I don't really know what our goal is with the port. Like, what are we trying to accomplish with them, at this point? So.
And tonight, I think we learned that, the revenue that they do give us, or they, by agreement, is for roads, and we spend more on maintaining Hueneme Road than the revenue we receive. So it's not a good public business partnership from our perspective. Maybe it is from theirs, but how do we have that conversation?
That's something, as an example, we can bring some of the things that we provide. And that, I do think that's sort of a missing part of that conversation, because we talk about the $2 million, the $2.5 million we get from the port each year, but we also should talk, when we talk about that, about what services we provide to the port for that. And then the council has the ability to say, we want to prioritize more things like the street paving that would help with the port, or we want to prioritize, there's a variety of things. Or even just, as an example, some of the projects that the port have coming forward, that we don't at this point know sort of what direction the council wants to go with those types of things. So we said in the report that, as we were going through this, the one we really were like, the one that we really think we need to have more time to talk about is goal 5, strategic partnerships. And we can sort of get direction related to those key partners moving forward. So the thought we had suggested was either having a workshop focused on that at the regular meeting on March 4th, or we could set a special meeting. But I think if we agreed to focus on that goal, I think it could be accomplished in the regular meeting with the amount of time that we have, because that agenda right now is actually fairly light.
We can try it and see where we go, at least.
Yeah, and if it doesn't work, then
we need more time, we can
have the
always
special.
request a special meeting.
Yeah.
So then the recommendation is to receive a brief, do we have any other questions?
How do we share items or thoughts for the meeting? Like, do each council member get to say, hey, look, here's the issues I think we should talk about? I mean, because we can't talk amongst each other.
Yeah.
So do we say to city manager, hey, here's my 5 issues that for strategic partnerships that I think we need to focus on?
There's a couple ways we could do it. And part of the idea with just talking about it now and kind of agreeing what we're coming back with is so everybody can come back with whatever information. We know now what the topics are we're going to talk about potentially. So like bring that information. Things can be sent to me and distributed to the council just as kind of one-way information. we have to be careful because of the Brown Act, and I see a microphone going on.
Yeah.
but it can't go back and forth and back and
He's
forth
been
and back
asleep
and
all
forth.
night long.
Yeah.
Well, it's not just that. The Brown Act is kind of interesting in that it also talks about legislative bodies receiving information en masse.
Okay.
And so the minute a quorum receives information and deliberates on that, you have legislative action that the public wasn't invited to and was not aware of. And so doing things like it refers to things like doing things by secret ballot and whatnot. These things are all prohibited under the Brown Act. So when we talk about a workshop and kind of individual council members bringing their individual ideas to the workshop, the collaborative aspect of that should really be done here where the public can see you. And so I understand the desire to organize it and make sure it's very focused so that when everybody gets here, everybody kind of is on the same page as to what's to be discussed, but that ends up being the problem.
On that note, like, let's say we schedule the meeting and I come and I have a PowerPoint or a document that I want to distribute amongst my fellow council members. Is that appropriate?
As long as you bring
Enough for
enough
the
for
audience.
yeah, if you're going to bring some for some, then you have to share with the rest of the class, so to speak. It's a public document at that point, and we have to be able to produce it.
Okay.
Okay, so then the recommendation is to receive a brief report on city council goals and provide feedback and direction, including setting a city council workshop at either the regular meeting on March 4th or a special meeting on March 11th. Do we have a motion request or a preference?
Yeah, I
The
think I
fourth?
heard a
Should we do motion?
consensus to try it on the 4th. We'll bring a little bit of information on those first 4 goals, and we'll include the, so it wasn't a wasted day, because we'll include the updated language for goal 4, but we'll include those first 4 goals, and then I think the consensus is, and then our focus for that hour, hour and a half, we'll try to keep that agenda light. We'll be talking about the partnerships, and people can come prepared to talk about those and what they want to accomplish with each of those partners this year.
So do you have a formal motion for that?
I would like to make a motion exactly what our city manager just said.
The best motion.
Second.
Okay, that's a cheap layout, but okay.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Thank you. Now we will go to city manager comments and reports.
Thank you. And I have 2 quick slides, and then we'll actually talk about the next agenda. So first, we have both our Run for Your Heart 5K, first ever, this Saturday morning. That is sold out. I think we got up to 600 people signing up for it, and then we had to cut it off just because of the space. But so we have the race Saturday, that's sold out, but we're still advertising the free health and wellness fair because that's a big part of it. And even if you're not in the race, you can come to the health and wellness fair and learn something or cheer on the people in the race.
Do you have a map of the setup?
We do, and I will. I don't have one. I didn't bring one to the meeting, but I'll send it out tomorrow to the council.
And we're supposed to have people on bikes helping direct.
Mhm.
I know that that's happening as well,
Yep.
because I know that
We have some
the
traffic.
certain people have ran the race multiple times just to make sure that it is the appropriate 5K. And then, so, because it's a little weird.
I think that might be it then. But so we'll send out the map, and we're planning to post more public information. We posted some this morning, but we're going to post some more in the next day or so too. And so that's on Saturday morning. And it's funny, a lot of people said they were going to wear costumes. I think the original date was before Valentine's, so I think people were into the spirit. I haven't heard if that carries over to the 24th, but you can come out in a costume and walk through the wellness fair and everything, even if you're not in the race. So we're looking forward to see people on Saturday. Then on Monday morning at 8:30 a.m., we have the groundbreaking for Bubbling Springs project. So we'll have that, and that's open to the public. We're putting information out to the public on that as well.
Is that Monday?
Monday morning. So those 2 events, and then just on March 4th, trying to get back into the habit of previewing the next agenda. I think the main thing will be the goal setting we just talked about, so we'll bring that back, ready to talk about that. And then we're also going to bring the second reading of the cannabis item from today. And then we're planning to bring back there was a request recently for a report on translation options. So we're going to bring that back at that meeting as well.
I'm sorry, regards to the fun run, there's probably several hundred people that walk to the lighthouse every day. And so I'm wondering, how are those people going to be impacted? Are they going to, because there's a number of people that are planning to walk to the lighthouse on Saturday, you know, irrespective of the fun run. So are they going to be allowed to do that?
There's going to be some traffic control to keep cars and people off of the actual race for that, probably for that 45, or I think we had said something like we expected it to be like 30 to 45 minutes, but it's going to be longer than that because some people will be like an hour to, an hour and 15 minutes or so. So for that period, we're going to have some people out there directing traffic and keeping people off the route. So for that 1 hour, 15 minute period.
Yeah, it's a great time to reflect yourself, guys.
Yeah.
Oh, Lord.
I have.
Thank you. We're going to move on to council member reports and comments. Councilmember Martinez, do you have any reports or comments?
Yes, I just want to mention that I have grown a big appreciation for what our city clerk does, because on Reach, I'm now the secretary, so I've been taking the minutes and the agenda. And then also for Sister City, temporarily, I'm going to be the secretary since we lost the secretary, because she had a new job where she can't make it anymore. But good news is for the sister cities, we approved the bylaws. We started brainstorming on our first fundraiser. We still can't get any funds, so we'd like to invite the city attorney to our next meeting so that maybe we can get the nonprofit going. And we're going to be having a social media website, Facebook page, and Instagram. And our next meeting is on March 6th at 6 p.m. I also want to mention that I had my first water agency board meeting today, and I was appointed as member at large for the AWA Ventura County Board of Directors. So it's a good meeting. I volunteered. For the record, I volunteered.
That's like nobody wants to do that.
Yeah, but I'm up for the task because I like to learn, and I just want to mention that basketball on Tuesdays and Saturdays has been great. I keep seeing new basketball players, which is cool. Like just new group of people every single time. Still looking forward to going to pickleball on Thursdays, but it's been great.
Thank you.
Yeah, I really want to thank Public Works, Joan Tharp, James Vega, for helping us organize a large effort this past Saturday with the Hueneme Beach Cleanup, Coastal Keepers, and Surf Rider. We did a heck of a job, had over 100 volunteers, and we're trying to ready the beach for the snowy plover nesting season, and I think we're going to try and get out there one more time. There's still a lot of work to be done, but we're really pleased with what we did, and I don't know if any of you saw that we actually, Randall Thomas, and we almost got injured, but we took a Volkswagen-size piece of foam out of the lagoon, which floated in from the ocean, and we're trying to figure out the story of this, like, what is the history of this thing? Where did it come from? How did it get here? But it literally floated in from the ocean and parked itself at the mouth of the lagoon. And because of all the special planning and work that we did, we were able to hoist it onto the tractor and get it out of there, and it's somewhere in Public Works. Have an executive committee meeting this Friday with Beacon. Things are going good, and I'm tired, so I'm just going to leave it at that.
Councilmember Hernandez.
Thank you, Mayor. Just a couple of things. I actually had a SCAG meeting this morning at 8:30. It was a legislative meeting. Also, I'll be requesting an agenda item regarding some of the requests, the asks that they're making of cities, and been attending base meetings along with RDP, the RDP group, in preparation of the Washington DC trip.
Thank you.
That's all I have.
Mayor Pro Tem?
Yeah, I've just been attending my meetings, and like Councilwoman Hernandez said, we've been touring the naval bases and
Sorry.
meeting with the leaders of the several commands, and so in preparation for our trip. Finally, I'd like to thank our Chief Federico for visiting us at Marlboro Seaside Village and providing our first meeting with the chief and the police department. Looking forward to having a drumbeat of meetings in the near future. And standing room only, we had folks from Pacific Collection, from Wainimi, Harbor Lights, Las Palomas, and our HOA. So it was almost standing room only. He provided some great information. Folks were very happy that he was there, and really appreciate that. So thank you so much.
Thank you. So I attended all the committee meetings that I need to. Nothing to report out on those, but except for the Port City meeting. One notable thing to note is the item regarding the monument location. After a vigorous and interesting discussion, we made it, what it came out of that is they wanted to know if we could vote on that now, but we eloquently relayed to them that we have a process we have to go through. We have to have a public hearing, invite the community, and it's not something that we can give a decision that day on, that we have to go through the city's process of how we do all of our events and invite the community for their consideration. So that was the gist of that, and that'll be happening as soon as we can possibly do. We also want to put out a community input kind of
Survey.
and kind of get the,
That item's been to council at least 4 or 5 times.
no,
So-
it actually hasn't. I
Since
have
the
never,
20th. Oh, yeah.
the monument, I have actually never heard of where the monument has ever
It's
been.
been on the white paper since 2020. No, it has not. It has too. I looked it up.
Excuse me. No.
Thank you,
discussion.
thank you, Kevin.
Okay. Well, as Mr. Vega
I'll send you the letters.
discussed, we have a process that we do with the city, and that includes community feedback. So that is important to this process.
And I think that they had said that their plan now, after that discussion, was to try to bring it around March 20th. So
Yep.
we told them the process to submit to do that. So.
And also part of that, which is, we have a section of that which will be our monument later, the Chumash Monument, which we haven't figured out what we're going to do. But I had a discussion with the Intertribal Council, and they've requested that we develop a monument that's related to their culture, and to make sure to stay away from doing a monument about people, because it's not something they don't put people up on monuments, and it's not culturally respectable for us to do that. And they recommended that we take a look at what Ventura's doing, maybe, and kind of do something in collaboration with that, and that way there could be an entire unveiling of both of those at the beach area at some point in time after obvious discussions. But that was a recommendation from the Chumash Intertribal Council. And that's it. Do we have a request for future agenda items?
I have one request from the meeting this morning, the legislative meeting this morning. Cities are being requested to respond to Governor Newsom's budget cuts, especially in regards to the REAP money, which is the Regional Early Action Planning Program, which helps fund housing programs. And so I'd like to request that if we approve the template, there's a template that has been provided, and if we could get that on the agenda for the next meeting, I'd appreciate it, so we could send that letter off.
Second.
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
Do we have any other agenda item requests?
Oh, I do have one.
Okay.
At some point, I would like to have a presentation on sea level rise and climate change. Jules from the port actually did an excellent presentation at the climate workshop, and if we could get him back here to do maybe a presentation on on climate change. Maybe he could be our resident expert to get us at least started in discussing that issue.
Do we have a second?
Thank you.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Hearing none, motion passes unanimously.
So I have one more item to make a comment about. There's a new business that is opening in Wainimi, and they're wanting to do an opening and invite local elected officials and community members to participate and kind of like do a red ribbon cutting. I think I sent you an email on it. I didn't know if you wanted to send it out, but it's the 27th, and it's the agency called the PHP Agency opening. It'll be at 7 p.m. and the address is 720 North Ventura Road. So
27th.
Tuesday, the 27th at 7 p.m. at 720 North Ventura Road, number 26.
You said March 27th?
February.
Oh, February 27th, okay. Did you, by any chance, let Tracy?
No, I just found out about it.
Okay. She might be interested in there.
I'll forward it to council and to Tracy tomorrow.
Thank you.
And that's it. So if there's nothing further, I'm going to adjourn this meeting. The next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, March 4th at 6:30 p.m. This meeting is now adjourned at 9:56 p.m.